The opening unfolded when that man casually created a single sword sheath. Yet that seemingly simple action caused the entire examination hall of hunters to tremble. Even Ryu Yun-ha, who was regarded as one of the top hunters at this time, also felt the urge to rush forward and seize it at once. The scene before them left all the judges stunned, hardly able to believe their eyes, because the sword he had just forged was releasing an oppressive aura that made it hard to breathe. After being appraised by the system, the fire attribute sheath was confirmed to have reached the super rare rank. Not only had storage capabilities, but also amplified mana several times over. No one could explain how a mere candidate was able to wield such terrifying forging skill. They did not know that in his previous life. This man once held the title of the strongest blacksmith. With his extraordinary craftsmanship, he forged countless divine weapons for heroes. He even fought alongside them to defeat the 6 destructive demon gods. Yet despite achieving victory, humanity still could not survive. Because among those 6 demon gods, there was one known as the Calamity of Annihilation. Though he was destroyed, the land still sank into the sea of death he left behind. Thinking of this, Lee Se-hun let out a bitter chuckle. I struggled to survive so many times, only to lose my life in this sea in the end. The remaining heroes fell one after another. Even the hero tower that guarded the land collapsed. This desolate cursed sea, though the demon god had been slain, still did not disappear, and at that moment a male voice sounded behind him. Are you really planning to stand here and perform alone? Seong-ha stepped in front of Lee Se-hun, frowning slightly at his frail appearance. Anyone would think you were carrying the whole world on your shoulders. Hearing that, Louis Valen turned and mocked. The one who was pretending to be exhausted earlier now wants to play the hero. Amir Singh held his head and complained, I said it before. Big brother only wants to reap the benefits after taking command of the Legion. After a brief silence, ignoring the attacks, Lee Se-hun coldly shouted, Shut up. Without the equipment I forged for you, you would have perished long ago. As soon as he finished speaking, Seong-ha grew angry. Louis Valen shook his head and remarked that he spoke harshly, and Amir Singh reminded him that was going too far. Right after that he cursed, making the air grow thick. If you do not like using them, then return everything to me. At that moment, Lee Se-hun had only one thought. The 3 before him were the 3 hounds. They did not stand on humanity's side, nor did they belong to the demon capital faction. They only acted on their own desires and always placed personal gain first. Though utterly selfish, they had survived until this moment and were the most active among them. Thinking that, Lee Se-hun suddenly wondered whether the outcome would have been different if they had acted sooner. His gaze once more turned toward the sun at the edge of the sea. He calmly sat down on the ground and glanced back to see who was still holding on. Seong-ha clutched his stomach and knelt, his voice dry. I have reached my limit. Everything inside is shattered. Louis Valen looked up at the sky and slowly said this side is no better. Perhaps because of the curse, blood keeps pouring out. And Amir Singh lamented that his heart was pierced and he likely would not survive. Seeing that, Lee Se-hun let out a helpless sigh. You should have joined forces from the beginning. Even as they were nearing death, he coldly scolded them. 3 dogs who only care about yourselves. Suddenly a loud explosion rang out, drawing Lee Se-hun attention. He saw that Seong-ha, Louis Valen, and Amir Singh had collapsed. At the sight, he calmly stood up and sighed. Even at the final moment, you still caused trouble. Lee Se-hun walked forward step by step and gently grasped the hammer. He raised the object into the air, his eyes fixed intently on the piece of metal below. After a while, he stabbed the blades into the ground beside Amir Singh's body, his voice hoarse. Take better care of your equipment. How can it be used when it is this damaged? In his heart he thought, at least this pile can serve as their gravestone. When it was done, Lee Se-hun looked up at the sky, standing silently amid the howling sea wind, mocking himself that it was finally his turn. His cracked and bleeding hand slowly lifted, his gaze icy. Perhaps this is the last time I do this. After saying that, he struck hard into the center of his chest. Space trembled lightly, glowing lines of text appeared before Lee Se-hun's eyes, and an emotionless voice echoed in his mind, beginning extraction of link from target Lee Se-hun. The level of connection with the original self reached a negative value, and a crystal appeared in his hand. A pale blue light surrounded the invisible ore, and the system coldly explained the unique skill. Link Blacksmith can obtain special ore from connected targets. The effect depends on the relationship and potential of the target. Se-hun stared at the crystal. He thought that if used on himself, what was created would be worse than ordinary iron ore. The colorless ore extracted from Lee Se-hun was completely empty. If only I had awakened earlier. He looked at the faint ore, his nails digging deep, whispering as if pleading, if there is nothing inside, then swallow this regret for me. Immediately after, Lee Se-hun suddenly raised the hammer high. A a dull sound echoing afar. He lifted his head to look at the black surging sea, unsure whether it was the sound of the ocean or that familiar echo, but there was one thing he was certain of. Whenever that sound rang by his ears, in that instant Lee Se-hun madly brought the hammer down upon the object, a thought flashing in his mind that a masterpiece beyond imagination would be born. At the final moment, the hammerhead slammed down fiercely. A beam of light suddenly tore through the sky. He raised his arm high. His voice lowered with determination. Even at the very end, no special power appeared, and he mocked himself for once hoping for a miracle. Looking at the colorless metal in his hand, he muttered that it remained painfully faint. Then I will end this life with my own hands right here. Lee Se-hun's facial muscles suddenly twitched, his eyes rolling back. He let out a distorted laugh amid the dark sea. The laughter mixed with madness and sorrow, so even at the final moment I was only a blacksmith. At that moment when he let go of the final sword, he realized a truth. The sound of the waves that had echoed since the day of awakening was not meaningless. All this time he wondered what it was. It turned out to be the sign of the Sea of Annihilation. He slowly closed his eyes. Regret as heavy as stone pressed on his chest, his lips trembling. If only I had understood earlier or persuaded those three from the start. Then he denied himself, no, if I had forged for others a little sooner, perhaps everything would have been different. The space around him suddenly twisted, a colossal image of an ancient armament appearing. A resounding announcement echoed, the sole projection of the Earth armament has appeared. Primordial regression mindscape skill is being activated. Amid the radiant beam of light, an unfamiliar voice resounded. He slowly rose to his feet with a calm demeanor, softly offering a greeting like a candidate whose name had been called before speaking. He snapped his eyes open, breathing rapidly, an indescribable sense of confusion surging within him. Before he could even steady himself, he saw the assistant standing opposite him. Assistant Han looked at him in confusion and shouted, "Lee Se-hun, what are you doing?" Hearing the shout, he flinched slightly. It had been 31 years since he last heard someone call him a candidate. Suddenly the man shouted, "Why are you standing there absent-mindedly in the middle of the entrance exam?" After speaking, he even glared at him. But Lee Se-hun glanced around. This is the entrance exam, the one from 31 years ago. This be Babel, or just fragments of memory flashing before he closed his eyes? His gaze brightened as he recalled the final moment. Wait, could the strange phenomenon he saw before dying have been real? The space around him seemed to fall silent. His breathing quickened. Have I returned to the starting point? Was it because of that linked stone weapon? Assistant Han sternly issued a final warning. The man added, "If you do not take this seriously, I will eliminate you immediately." Hearing that, he instinctively nodded and answered yes. Se-hun stared at the hammer below and murmured, "So this is regression." His hand tightened slightly in midair as if gripping an invisible hammer handle. If only he had realized that ability sooner and trained beforehand, could the outcome have changed? He immediately denied it himself. No, that was not the core issue. His breathing gradually steadied, his heart calmed, his body felt reborn in that lucid instant. He looked at his palm. There was only one thing that mattered now. I must succeed. The corner of his lips lifted slightly. He stood upright in the middle of the room, his eyes blazing like a forge newly ignited. First his voice resonated low in his mind, "I must protect everyone." A faint smile appeared on his lips again, as he vowed that in this life he would certainly pass the Babel exam. He raised the hammer, his eyes shining fiercely. Confronting those three was only the beginning. Suddenly a small spark flared up. Kim In-chin flinched slightly and turned toward the forge. He exclaimed in astonishment, "That candidate." Before them, Lee Se-hun was continuously hammering the piece of metal. Kim In-chin stepped closer, his eyes following those hands. The movement seemed slow, yet the rhythm was flawless. The sound rang out clear and crisp. He watched the metal ingot intently and marveled inwardly. This was truly high-level forging technique. In that moment he stood still, his eyes never leaving him, nodding slightly in approval. He stared without blinking as the iron gradually took shape, wondering just how refined it was. Assistant Han widened his eyes. Could he really create that? Kim In-chin chuckled softly. A gifted candidate like that would have passed long ago if he had submitted early. At that moment, Se-hun brought the hammer down forcefully. The resounding clang drew everyone's attention. Then suddenly, the piece of metal shattered into tiny fragments. Assistant Han froze, while Kim In-chin opened his eyes wide in shock. At Lee Se-hun's home, he stared blankly at the glowing mass in his hand. He rotated the small metal piece and muttered softly, "Not bad, but why is it so small?" He pressed his lips together in thought. The link extraction skill could designate a target to create a type of ore that did not originally exist. Se-hun looked at the metal, his gaze darkening. The problem was that the link level was still low, so it was difficult to utilize. Looking at the status panel before him, he gave a faint smile. Compared to Babel freshman, I am far too lacking. He lifted his head and sighed, what a pity, but if that was the price for returning to the past, then it was still acceptable. He told himself to remain calm and not be impatient. Thinking of the future, his eyes turned cold. Desiring more at this moment would only be ambition. There was still time to crush those demonic creatures. Those beings from the demon realm threatened not only humanity, but the entire planet. 6 powerful demon gods were the cause of that destruction. Everything lay within their scheme. Sehun looked into the void and told himself that to stop them he could not hesitate, nor could he falter before future upheavals. First he needed weapons or skills tied to his old memories. He nodded slightly in affirmation. The first step was to enroll in Babel. That was settled. Next was, just then a beam of light flashed and caught his attention. His eyes widened, astonishment evident on his face. System solemnly announced that the link level of user Lee Sehun had increased. 1. The link imprint skill has been activated. 1 week later at Babel Academy. Under the morning sun, Babel Academy appeared majestic. In the wide corridor, Sehun sighed irritably. Damn it, I got lost again. Is this the place? He looked around and stopped before a familiar sign. Found it. As soon as he stepped inside and politely said good morning, someone cut in and called his name. He froze for a moment, then his expression shifted to surprise. Michael Bamuth tapped the desk slowly and mocked that he seemed quite at ease. He frowned and glanced at the crowded waiting room, asking if he did not see everyone waiting. Michael Bamuth, vice principal of the Borsapa department. Kim Inchin could not help but say there were still 10 minutes before the supplementary exam began. The man cut him off. The issue was not time but attitude, his voice lowering. I will warn him. Sehun felt slightly awkward, thinking that not only was the forging department difficult but that man was also at odds with his superior. He glanced at Kim Inchin and understood why he had once recommended another student. While he was still glancing around, Bamuth turned back with undisguised anger. That man's gaze swept from head to toe over Sehun, causing him to pause briefly and lower his hand reflexively. After a brief hesitation, Sehun slowly offered a greeting even though the other party showed clear contempt. The man let out a sarcastic laugh. What is this naive brat trying to pull? It has been a long time since I was treated like this. Truly unbelievable. At that moment, a voice rang out and drew everyone's attention. As everyone arrived, immediately afterward a figure appeared beneath the sunlight. Sehun and Han Bamuth turned to look at the same time. Michael Bamuth exhaled. We were waiting for you, principal. Sehun widened his eyes when he realized who had just arrived. Ryu Yunha walked forward and took a seat, meeting his gaze. She looked at him coldly and softly apologized for arriving late. Ryu Yunha, principal of the Borsapa department of Babel. Seeing her, Sehun could not help but feel flustered. Why was this person here? He fell silent when their eyes met, as if searching through distant memory. He had once heard that she previously worked at Babel. Thinking that, his heart grew even more unsettled. He had not expected that she was now seated in the position of principal. An S-rank hero, the weapon devourer Ryu Yunha, the one who possessed the ability to absorb weapons to increase her strength. Before he turned back time, she had only been a regular guest who often visited his shop. A long time later, Ryu Yunha appeared with a more timid demeanor than before. Her voice softened slightly. Her eyes curved as if smiling, yet deep within them lay an unreadable emotion. I truly regret having swallowed your weapon. At that time, Lee Sehun stood motionless like a statue, offering no response to Ryu Yunha. The space around Gang Fan fell into silence. She lowered her head gently and quietly stepped aside. Lee Sehun put on an expression of fury, his teeth clenched so tightly his body trembled, and after everything. In the end, he could only lower his head in helplessness. Returning to reality, a short yet decisive call rang out and pulled him from his thoughts. Lee Sehun. Lee Sehun. Sehun jolted back to his senses and quickly replied, yes, yes. Kim Inchin spoke in a steady voice, his gaze sweeping over each examinee. We will now begin explaining the contents of the test. Everyone focused. He emphasized each word clearly, every syllable pronounced distinctly. You have a total of 90 minutes to complete this test. Kim Inchin paused briefly before continuing. Within those 90 minutes your task is to forge a piece of equipment compatible with the sword from the previous exam. Kim Inchin suddenly fell silent for a few seconds, creating a heavy atmosphere. However, his voice turned cold, each word sounding like a command. You are only permitted to use alchemical forging techniques to craft it. Kim Inchin slightly inclined his head toward the rows of shimmering ores. As for the materials, he lowered his voice. You may freely choose any type of ore available here. His tone deepened, his gaze sharp. He glanced respectfully at the two judges. The completed product will be graded directly by Principal Ryu Yoon-ha and Vice Principal Bama, so devote all your effort to creating something you can be most proud of. He decisively lowered his hand, his voice ringing out like a signal to begin. All right. Before everyone stood Lee Se-hun and Han Bama. In-chan loudly announced, the exam officially begins. After a long while, he muttered softly under his breath, only alchemical forging allowed. Se-hun pressed his lips together, eyes fixed on the pile of materials. I must create resonance with pure magic to restrain the primal spiritual force from erupting. Seeing this, Han Bamoth let out a faint sneer. Do you think staring at that pile of ore will make your magic power increase on its own? He slowly raised his head, his gaze turning cold. Did I hear wrong? Se-hun asked again with curiosity, were you just mocking me? He curled his lips into a smile. Who else would I be talking about besides us here? At that moment, Kim In-chan's voice rang out coldly. He raised his voice in warning, refrain from remarks unrelated to the examination. Hearing that, he slightly lowered his head. I will be more mindful. Se-hun was briefly stunned. Han Bama. What is this? So he is the son of that judge. Michael Bama. Thinking of that man revealed a meaningful smile. No wonder the two look so alike. Se-hun turned to look at him coldly. The more he thought about it, the more ridiculous it seemed. While Han Bamoth secretly guessed the other party had probably realized it. He curled his lips slightly. About me being the cherished son of the vice principal. He is merely someone of ordinary background with the weakest magic power among the examinees. While I was born into the renowned Bamoth family famous for alchemy, and I possess magic power enough to rival the top student of Class 52, the outcome of this confrontation was already decided from the very beginning. Above them, Ryu Yoon-ha closely observed every move of the two. She smiled faintly. Lapis stone and Hainan jade are both materials containing immense magic power. Moreover, they are primal ores imbued with water elemental spiritual force. Kim In-chan continued in a low voice, water elemental magic inherently suppresses fire, so forging them is extremely difficult. Michael Bamoth curled his lips. That is old news. Modern alchemical techniques have far surpassed the past. In the face of that arrogance, Kim In-chan calmly said, alchemical methods are not bound by space or circumstance, but the crafting time depends on the caster and the type of ore. Under today's conditions, only 30 minutes are needed. Michael Bamoth continued smiling calculatingly. He lowered his voice. Han Bamoth can synthesize any type of ore within half an hour. A few days ago, Han Bamoth rotated a crystal block using spiritual force. Kim In-chan was briefly unsettled, completing resonance in just 30 minutes. He could not help but shiver. If he has reached that level, then he has far surpassed second-year students, not to mention freshmen. Suspicion flashed in Kim In-chan's eyes, so they tightened the time to forge magic stones, prepared the materials in advance, and imposed the alchemical method outright. They deliberately chose an exam topic that gave absolute advantage to Han Bama, one who had always excelled in alchemy. Kim In-chan's gaze stopped on that man's face. Michael Bamoth, as cunning as a venomous snake. Se-hun let out a soft breath. This will do. Ryu Yoon-ha looked at him curiously, unable to hide her surprise. That is. All eyes turned toward him. Hydret stone and scarlet fire stone. Mita frowned slightly, sensing unstable fluctuations from the two ores. They are the fire elemental versions of Lapis and Hainan jade, with extremely high magic concentration. That man coldly remarked, his strength is still unknown, but his ego is certainly not small. Han Bamoth cast a glance toward Lee Se-hun. He looked at Se-hun's pile of materials. Did he deliberately choose ores completely opposed to mine? Thinking that, he burst into laughter. How foolish. With that meager amount of magic power, do not dream of controlling scarlet fire stone. He smiled confidently. This seems easier than expected, but then his gaze suddenly changed. Back on Se-hun's side, the system notified that the contract engraving skill had been activated. A dry sound rang out. Magical light enveloped his body. Contract engraving harmony is in operation. The skill allows attaching a contract stone to existing equipment positions such as left hand or right hand, status running. Equip Silverfire Iron to the right hand, immediately after a flame slowly descended. After a moment of silence, the corner of his lips moved slightly, though I still have a long road ahead, displaying such a mishmash like this. He halted the hammer midair, his gaze icy. As a blacksmith, I cannot accept that. Witnessing this, Assistant Han Din Kwang shouted, did you just ruin the weapon in front of the professor? Do you think forging is a joke? Se-hun calmly called out, Examiner. Under Kim In-chan's astonished gaze, he calmly proposed, I want to redo the test. Hearing that, the assistant shouted again, hey you examinee, but was cut off by Kim In-chan. Kim In-chin crossed his arms and firmly ordered, "Bring him the remaining materials." Assistant Han was stunned. "What?" Frowned at him. "He did not violate the rules, or do you want me to fetch them myself?" The assistant dared not argue. Assistant Han hurriedly replied, "I will bring the materials at once." Kim In-chin approached the forge and looked straight at Lee Se-hun, his voice low yet pressuring. "Young man," he sternly reminded, "do you know there are only 40 minutes left in the exam?" He nodded yes. Kim In-chin looked at the fragments and asked, "Do you believe smashing it was the right decision?" Se-hun glanced quickly at the shattered metal blocks. Then he looked straight at Kim In-chin with firm eyes. "I cannot submit something like that." He tilted his head slightly in thought before speaking slowly. "Very well, do your best." After a while, Se-hun's eyes ignited once more with determination. He took a deep breath, feeling this young yet still weak body, telling himself under pressure, "With this body perfect forging is indeed difficult." Se-hun frowned slightly as magic power, strength, and even time were all dwindling. "Best choice right now is..." Suddenly a fierce hissing sound erupted from the forge. Everyone startled and turned around. "What is happening?" Someone shouted in panic. "Is he pumping magic power into the flint stones?" Another stepped forward half a pace and yelled, "What are you doing? If those stones ignite, they will explode. Stop at once." But Se-hun calmly activated the flame. The entire room fell silent as the flame. 5-colored flame burst forth violently without exploding. Someone exclaimed in shock, "How is that possible? This guy is truly reckless." At that very moment, an invisible surge of magic power suddenly struck straight at him. In the chaotic scene, several people cried out in alarm, "It is on fire. Bring the extinguisher here quickly." Assistant Han Jun called for help. "Professor, please intervene." Kim In-chin barely responded. "Let him handle it himself. Do not mention the candidate. Do not react even as a person." Hearing this, he sternly signaled to watch the flow of fire. He could not help but feel unsettled. Yes, right before Lee Se-hun was a 5-colored fire demon, the scorching flames born from the resonance of 5 types of fire-starting stone. He curled his lips in a smile, eyes fixed on the fire, demanding extremely precise control of magical power. This was a brilliant technique, even usable when magical power was minimal. Candidate stammered in disbelief. "What, it doesn't explode?" Another hesitated, "Wait, hungry. Could it be that?" Someone pointed at the iron ingot in the furnace, exclaiming in surprise. The color of the ingot had changed, witnessing the new form. Kim In-chin quickly understood. It turned out he had used fire-starting stones to enhance the heat and transform the iron ingot. He looked at Lee Se-hun with concern. This shortened the forging time of the gang fan considerably, yet with 30 minutes left, time was still tight. Thinking this, Kim In-chin silently noted, "The previous forge was also excellent, but if only that would not finish in time." Sharp fragments of metal flew everywhere. Seeing this, he smirked, a rare spark of excitement in his eye. Immediately after, Lee Se-hun clenched the block with bare hands. Then he slowly placed it into the forge. Lee Se-hun exhaled with effort. Then he continued striking the metal hard with the hammer. Lee Se-hun's arm stopped midair. Seeing this, he gritted his teeth, feeling his magic depleted, murmuring, "Out of magic, the protective layer shattered." Body weakened. Training needed to start immediately after the test, yet Lee Se-hun's hands were bleeding, blood spreading across his palm. In that moment, he only thought not a single second could be wasted. Immediately after, Lee Se-hun hammered frantically, deciding to push his body to the limit. At this time, Kim In-chin's voice rang out. 10 minutes left, 3 minutes, to the final minute he met. Shout that shook the gang fan space for a minute. Just after lifting, Lee Se-hun raised the sword. Kim In-chin shouted again, "Stop." Hearing this, he slightly parted his lips to exhale. Lee Se-hun clenched his hands under the table, blood continuously dripping. Meanwhile, the system screen flashed, the 5-colored flame sword completed. "You obtained Artisan Fire Skill C." A golden notification appeared in space. Judgment results: 5-colored flame sword level high, quality good. Curved sword carved with 5 flames. The fire in the blade reacted with magical power, creating brilliant colors, revealing forging potential, colors shifting with magic. Someone shivered, repeating, "High-level weapon." Lee Se-hun added, "Please check the detailed description." Everyone saw this as an achieved result. Assistant Han was excited, almost shouting, "Pass." Kim In-chin signaled, "Silence immediately, kid." Apologies. The scene shifts to a room. Kim In-chin's office. Inside, he glanced back worriedly. Lee Se-hun sat upright before the desk, asking with unwavering eyes, "This sword worthy of submission this time?" "No." Kim In-chin paused briefly, temporarily yes. He exhaled, seeing he was still unsatisfied. "Lee Se-hun, I'll speak frankly." Kim In-chin spoke in a deep voice, "This place does not meet your standard. Better withdraw your application." Kim In-chin continued, Babel's reputation overwhelming, but the metallurgy department no longer produced notable achievements. Lee Se-hun remained silent, slightly frowning, fully aware. Babel's metallurgy department will close in 8 years due to lowered standards. Vulcan Academy will become the best training ground for blacksmiths in the world. After a brief hesitation, Kim In-chin cautiously suggested, Vulcan might be the best in the future. Hearing this, Lee Se-hun interrupted, "You are wrong, the best place is not Vulcan." He pointed to himself, "The best place is Babel, where I am about to enroll." At that moment Lee Se-hun declared, "Professor, you are mistaken." He looked at Kim In-chin unwaveringly, "The best place is Babel, where I am about to enroll." He was momentarily startled, eyes flickering, staring with suspicion and amazement. Kim In-chin narrowed his eyes, scrutinizing him, voice slow and challenging, "You must become valedictorian first, confident." He answered, "Of course, no student surpasses me." Just after speaking, Kim In-chin's expression changed, asking seriously, "Do you know the Babel valedictorian selection process?" Receiving the question, Lee Se-hun quickly recited, "They choose valedictorian via supplementary exam between top 2 students, determining valedictorian from that which is good. I know Babel Academy divides students into 3 broad groups. Combat Department, AGA-QUF, Support Department, Technology Department, BOSIPA each area. Dozens of majors interwoven like roots. Becoming valedictorian means being evaluated best among countless majors and recognized by Babel as top talent. Back in reality, Kim In-chin clearly showed tension. Arms clenched to the point of trembling, Kim In-chin turned to Lee Se-hun, voice deep and sincere, "I repeat, not as professor but as senior blacksmith." He continued, "Even as valedictorian, success is hard to hope for. Come to Vulcan Academy." Kim In-chin nodded slightly as if deciding for him that was the right path. Lee Se-hun looked at the man with respect, placing the junior's future on him. He was honorable. After silence, he affirmed once again, "Environment does not matter, as I said." Eyes lit up, voice cheerfully ringing, "Babel, where I am about to enroll, golden. Soon will be the best place." Kim In-chin slightly panicked. "He will excel there." Finally, a hint of amusement appeared at his mouth. Kim In-chin laughed, reaching out to Lee Se-hun, proclaiming even surpassing arrogance, "Yet for some reason I do not bear it." He extended his hand, eyes sincere at him, "I look forward to working with you." Seeing this, Lee Se-hun did not hesitate to grip Kim In-chin's hand tightly, pressing forcefully. He smiled, so did he. Sparkling text appeared before him. Connection with target Kim In-chin established. Connection with creator Lee Se-hun at level 1, extracting from Kim In-chin. Only seeing Lee Se-hun clench his hand, the object floating in his palm. A metal block appeared, fire smoldering inside. System described link as iron carrying fire. High quality medium metal contains fire, property like wood, can store fire inside. Only seeing Lee Se-hun's arm covered in flame. Witnessing the scene, he gritted his teeth. What trivial trick is that guy using? Meanwhile, he remained focused, activating the metal blocks. That very moment, the iron ore blocks began to rotate around one another. Witnessing the scene, Lee Se-hun curved his lips into a faint smile. In his eyes flickered a blazing light like fire, while Ryu Yoon-ha's group kept their gaze fixed on him without looking away. On the opposite side, Michael Bamuth slightly furrowed his brows. Could that man be trying to create resonance by using the same attribute as the mineral? How naive! The fundamental principle should be to use pure mana to make those primordial minerals harmonize with each other. He silently concluded that if he stubbornly continued like that, sooner or later, the magical elements would lose control and erupt. Thinking of that, Michael Bamuth curled his lips in mockery. Truly a fool. In his mind, he was certain an accident was about to occur, and at that very instant Se-hun forcefully swung his hand forward. His arm was immediately covered in a layer of shimmering scale. The entire gang fan space suddenly fell silent. Lee Se-hun remained standing still in the same posture. At that sight, Kim In-chin and Yoon-ha quickly lowered their heads. Michael Bamuth widened his eyes in shock. What exactly was this immense source of firepower within just a fleeting moment? Immediately, a sword gradually took shape before everyone's eyes. Lee Se-hun's lips moved slightly as if whispering something. System's voice rang by his ear. Ironfire Silver has been unequipped. Processing complete. Congratulations, you have successfully crafted the fire accumulation scabbard. Activation complete. Before that astonishing scene, Ryu Yoon-ha's eyes widened in disbelief. Michael Bamuth was so stunned that his entire body went rigid like a statue. None of them could help but be shaken. How could this possibly happen? Had he truly created a miracle? The system screen flashed, displaying the fire accumulation scabbard, rare grade, quality. Low tier, a scabbard that gathers first level fire attribute mana. capable of storing and amplifying fire spiritual power, allowing the activation of special fire attribute skill. Cold sweat trickled down Han Bamoth's temples. Had he already completed the synthesis step, that speed was truly unbelievable. He stared at his palm, his mind in chaotic turmoil. This completely defied common sense. The elements should have erupted. The more Han Bamoth thought, the more confused he became. Could he have overlooked something? At that moment, Michael Bamoth was startled. He hurriedly shouted, "Stop at once. If you pour primal spiritual power into those stones, the consequences will be unpredictable." At that time, the sphere in Han Bamoth's hand began to tremble violently. Vibration was so strong that his vision blurred from the heat. Then suddenly the sphere exploded, fragments scattering everywhere. A resounding shock rang out, causing the entire gang fan space to tremble. That afternoon in the refining department examination hall, the scene gradually shifted into the inner room. The floor was littered with shattered crystal fragments. Han Bamoth stood there with his face covered in scratches and dust. After a heavy moment of silence, Kim In-chin slowly spoke, ordinarily after completing the rigorous evaluation stage. He paused briefly, gritting his teeth to suppress his irritation. One of the two would be recommended for the title of Valedictorian of the department. Saying that, he raised his head and looked straight at Han Bamoth, however. The recent incident was truly regrettable, and none of us wished for it. Han Bamoth shrank back, clutching his bleeding arm. Kim In-chin looked at him and continued, "I did not expect the examination to end when one side was forced to withdraw." At the same time, Michael Bamoth clenched his teeth in restraint. Though furious, he kept his voice calm. Since a student was injured during the exam, the best course is to annul the result and hold a retest on another day. Kim In-chin immediately turned sharply and objected sternly. "We cannot deny the result of a valid examination. Moreover, was that accident not caused by Han's own negligence?" Michael Bamoth tilted his head, his icy gaze directed at him, his voice like frost. "Professor Kim, it seems you value achievements over the safety of students." After speaking, he fell silent, but a flash of anger crossed his eye. Michael Bamoth stood up and leisurely walked to the center of the hall. "Let us not discuss that matter for now." He stared at Lee Se-hun as if trying to see through his secret. "The fastest resonance record in academia is 5 minutes. Yeah." He raised his voice almost shouting. "A freshman who just enrolled could circulate mana and achieve instant resonance. Do you think that is reasonable?" The essence of alchemical forging was originally a technique created to craft weapons with mana when conventional forging was impossible. Therefore, the focus of alchemy is not the traditional forging method of using brute force to suppress raw ore. To understand the mineral core and awaken the vitality hidden deep within it, that is the true essence of alchemical forging. In that moment, Lee Se-hun clearly understood that what he had just done was proof of that truth. Sooner or later, the forging world would realize through countless trials and errors that this method was simple and would become the future standard, so he had no need to hide it. But he had no time to explain to a stubborn old man who only knew how to shout without listening. In the end, he replied coldly, "I do not understand what nonsense you are talking about." Michael Bamoth curled his lips, just as I thought. "You used those gang fan ore fragments." He sneered with contempt, an inexperienced brat forging rare equipment. "If you intend to deceive others, at least fabricate a more convincing story." Se-hun frowned, his eyes darkened from the insult, yet his voice remained calm. "What exactly are you implying?" Yoon-ha suddenly interjected to break the tense atmosphere. "That is right, this is truly hard to believe." Michael Bamoth lowered his head, yet the corner of his lips curved with calculation. "I knew it. You would surely notice this issue, Principal. This is indeed a farce. We should revoke Lee Se-hun's examination rights for cheating and hold a retest." While she calmly walked past him, Ryu Yoon-ha stopped in front of Se-hun's sword. Kim In-chin watched in confusion. Before the principal, Ryu Yoon-ha carefully picked up the sword. A whisper of astonishment slipped from her lips. Unbelievable. From the corner of Ryu Yoon-ha's mouth, a trace of drool seeped out from sheer excitement. Suddenly she pointed toward Lee Se-hun, student Lee Se-hun. With eyes shining like a child who had found treasure, she suggested, "May I try it a little? Not much, just a light touch of the lips. I want to taste it once." As soon as she finished speaking, Michael Bamoth froze, confusion evident in his eye. Kim In-chin also stared at her speechless. "Try it a little." A faint gulp sounded in her throat. A growling sound came from Ryu Yoon-ha's stomach, causing everyone around to stiffen. Late in the afternoon, the scene shifted to the city center. Lee Se-hun calmly left the academy amid the passing crowd. Beneath the blazing red sunset, he thought to himself that the final refinement step was still incomplete, not yet reaching the ultimate level. Thinking that, he steadied himself to keep his mind calm. Even so, he still smiled, his hair swaying in the evening wind, his face showing delight as he recalled the trembling rage of the old vice principal. Passers-by looked at him warily, whispering that the smile was strange before quickly pulling their companions away. Suddenly he halted. Come to think of it, the name Bamoth sounded familiar, yet he could not remember where he had heard it. He repeatedly slapped his forehead, murmuring non-stop, Bamoth, Bamoth, Bamoth. An image from his previous life surfaced. Louis Valen had once gritted out in fury that while still in Babel, the cheap weapons bought with his sweat and labor under that man's orders had suddenly exploded. He had shouted, filled with resentment, because of that I suffered mana burns and fell into this miserable state. If not for that man, it would not have come to this. At that time, Lee Sehun had merely looked at Louis Valen with cold eyes. Turning to the present, his steps halted as a terrifying thought flashed through his mind. The blacksmith who had left Louis Valen permanently crippled was Bamoth, so was Han Bamoth the same person. Thinking of that, he slightly frowned. The greatest goal of this life was to approach and reform the three hounds. But as for the mad hound, it seemed no longer necessary. Lee Sehun let out a cold chuckle, his gaze gradually turning sharp and unfathomable. In his mind flashed the thought that as long as he stopped Han Bamoth from continuing his tyranny, Louis Valen would not fall onto the wrong path. In an instant, the scene shifted back to the classroom of the refining department. An indignant shout echoed from within. Do you truly intend to let student Lee Sehun keep the top position of our department? A representative spoke up, slow yet laced with doubt. Several professors from other departments also voiced their opinions. Have you truly thought this decision through? The person seated beside him hesitated slightly. Even if that is your intention, I fear it may be somewhat too hasty. Ryu Yun-ha calmly placed both hands on the table. His composed gaze swept across each person. His deep voice rang out clearly. Is there anyone here who opposes my decision? Not a single senior professor directly refuted him. They merely shook their heads with caution. The tone leaned more toward compromise than opposition, as Michael Bamoth interjected as if offering sincere advice. That man continued evenly, Principal. After all, you have only recently taken office. At those words, Ryu Yun-ha's gaze changed at once. It was a cold look tinged with restrained anger. Another person chimed in. His equipment is indeed remarkable, but perhaps we should deliberate more carefully before reaching a final conclusion. Kim In-chin immediately cut in. You speak so because you have not witnessed Lee Sehun's accumulated flame sword sheath with your own eyes. Though its craftsmanship is not yet flawless, the way it operates mana and its harmony with the five-colored flame sword cannot be underestimated. Another professor could not hide his admiration. It is truly impressive, yet I still have doubts about its practical application. At that moment, Yun-ha spoke. This weapon has not even reached 60% of the level of completion Lee Sehun expected. That very incompleteness proves its extraordinary potential for growth. He emphasized each word as if engraving them into everyone's minds, if you had witnessed it with your own eyes. The atmosphere in the room suddenly turned heavy as Ryu Yun-ha slowly continued, each word as weighty as stone. If after Lee Sehun's upcoming valedictorian demonstration you still refuse to accept my decision, declared resolutely, I will immediately step down from the position of principal. In the vast plaza, Louis Valen's voice resounded through the sound-amplifying magic array, solemn and drawn out like an ancient oath. 54 years ago, the heavens bestowed the hero tower for the evolution of mankind. The space grew tense as an illusion recreated the shattered sky. He lowered his voice. In response, hell released a swamp of chaos, something that eroded all life. When we discovered a new opportunity, an immense calamity arrived at the same time. Standing in the grand hall, Louis Valen spoke with fervor. Babel was born in that very moment of upheaval. This is the largest academy ever built, located in the heart of the Pacific Ocean to this day. Babel has trained countless outstanding heroes. He solemnly named one, most notably the ascended Emperor Louis Schubert. One day you will also become part of that rank. His voice was earnest. Continue walking your own path now that you have set foot in Babel Academy. His tone suddenly rose, solemn like an oath upon a battlefield. That is the sacred mission of a hero. The one who had just delivered the speech was the ascended Emperor Louis Valen Subat. Lee Sehun stood silently amid the sea of people. Quietly observed Louis Valen on the stage, calculating inwardly. On the surface that man appeared gentle, but in truth he was far from a simple benevolent elder. The host stepped forward, raising the microphone. Next will be the performance of the most outstanding valedictorians of this year's admission. We invite the valedictorians of each department to step onto the stage. At the invitation, the young men and women strode forward with confidence. He watched those proud backs, Memories of his previous life flickered, valedictorians. In the past he had wondered why some people became so arrogant merely because of their academy achievements. At that moment the MC raised his voice. We will now begin the skill demonstration. He glanced around, the corner of his lips curling into a faint smile. Witnessing this scene, he seemed to understand the reason. The MC excitedly introduced, the model for today's demonstration is this masterpiece, ladies and gentlemen. As soon as he finished speaking, automaton number 9 appeared before everyone's eyes. The moment he saw it, he excitedly introduced the golem from the workshop. Automaton number 9 possesses combat power comparable to a C-rank hero. Sehun's gaze locked onto number 9. He chuckled with interest, a model specialized for close combat. I see no weapons equipped, it will likely rely on martial arts. The MC extended his hand toward the arena entrance. The first to open is the representative of the combat department. His voice was filled with drama. The performance belongs to AGA-QUF Valedictorian, Jake Myers. Immediately after, Jake Myers and automaton number 9 appeared on the stage. Sehun observed the dark-haired youth stepping out. Jake Myers, the third son of the Myers family, rumored to have abandoned his family swordsmanship to pursue martial arts. It seems the rumors were true. The MC shouted loudly, then the match will begin right here. The automaton's eyes instantly lit up. A signal was given, and the battle commenced at once. As soon as the words fell, it forcefully twisted its foot against the ground. The automaton shot forward like a raging whirlwind, threw a powerful straight punch. Jake Myers swiftly turned to evade, while the automaton continued to press forward. It repeatedly swung its fists at him in a relentless barrage. Jake suddenly leaped, his toes skimming close to the floor. He lifted his head to look at his opponent. My turn. As soon as he finished speaking, Jake charged straight at the automaton without hesitation. His hand clenched into a fist in an instant. Jake delivered a direct punch into the machine's body. The sight left the audience holding their breath. The students were nearly stunned by the explosive strength. Jake continued his fierce assault, giving the automaton no chance to counterattack. Sehun's eyes widened at that terrifying speed. How is this possible? He remembered that man had died early when he had only reached a rank in his early 20s. Thinking that, he could not help but feel unsettled. With this level of strength, that man should have been a rare genius of Babel. Sehun inwardly questioned why in his previous life that man had only stopped at a rank. Back on the arena, Jake curled his lips coldly. Is that all? In the final moment, Jake swung his arm to finish the match with Otto Martin. The automaton's upper half was blasted into the air before crashing down to the ground. Jake withdrew his fist and stood upright amid the slowly dispersing dust. He let out a soft sigh. It has been a long time since I could move so freely. The MC's voice trembled slightly, truly outstanding. He nearly shouted in excitement, a breathtaking performance. Student Jake Myers defeated a C-rank automaton in the blink of an eye. The MC turned back to the audience, marveling at the level of an AGA-QUF valedictorian. In another corner, Lee Sehun remained silent as he observed. He frowned slightly, thinking that this opening was too explosive. The next person would surely face tremendous pressure. The announcement rang out once more, calmer and more dignified. Next is the valedictorian of the support department student Inao Erica. Sehun frowned slightly upon seeing the long-haired, black-haired girl step out. So she is the valedictorian. Pressure. For her it is probably nothing to worry about. Inao Erica, the eldest daughter of the Inao family, one of the 3 great prestigious families of Japan. She was not one who conquered the summit, but she once became famous as an S-rank hero with a mythic-grade weapon. Yet later she was corrupted into a demon and purged by her own family. Thinking of that future, Sehun quietly made a decision of his own. Friending her would likely bring no benefit. Suddenly, Inao Erica turned her head to look toward him. Sehun was momentarily stunned, returning her gaze blankly. Followed her every step, his mind in turmoil. Did she truly look at me just now? The MC solemnly announced, the automaton used for this segment is still number 9, but now equipped with armor. Its defensive capability increased by 1.5 times compared to before. He excitedly shouted, let us see what surprise student Inao will bring. Suddenly, Inao Erica took out a raven. Her eyes flashed with a sharp cold light. She softly whispered a command, advance. As soon as she finished speaking, the raven immediately flapped its wings and flew out. It shot up into the air and circled around the automaton. At that sight, Sehun felt momentarily confused. Just a raven. At the same time, the automaton lifted its head to track it. Its mechanical eyes glowed with a strange red light. Sehun carefully observed its every movement. He evaluated inwardly, the automaton has switched to absolute defense mode. Penetrating that solid protection, especially against a defense-specialized model, will not be easy. Gu turned to face Inao Erica, the corner of her lips curling slightly with hidden meaning. The raven spread its jet-black wings across the sky. Two legs stretched out, revealing cold, sharp talons. One of the raven's eyes flashed with an eerie blue light. Beneath the blazing sun, it opened its wings wide as if covering the entire sky. Immediately after, the raven suddenly accelerated, diving straight toward the automaton's position. Below, the gang fan area fell into chaos, dust swirling thickly as Lee Se-hun watched in near shock. On this side, cracks appeared across the automaton's body, sparks of electricity bursting out in flashes. At some point, a dark red hole had already emerged on its body. In the blink of an eye, the automaton collapsed heavily onto the ground. Seeing this, Inao Erica waved her hand in signal. The raven immediately returned, and the MC shouted excitedly once more. It was beyond imagination. With just a single strike, the armored automaton had fallen. She had just pierced through a C-rank opponent. The crowd erupted in cheers praising Inao Erica. Looking toward Lee Se-hun, he forced a smile, telling himself that in such a feverish atmosphere, if he only showed his weapon and ended it quickly, there might be backlash. At that moment, the MC raised his voice. And now please welcome the top student of the Bossipa Technology Department, Lee Se-hun. The host enthusiastically continued. Next will be the performance of the top technology student of Bossipa, Lee Se-hun. In the monitoring area, Louis Schubert was watching the match on the large screen. He chuckled softly. This year's top students were truly formidable. It had been a long time since someone from the refinement department led the ranks, but would the pressure weigh heavily on that young man? Beside him was the second supervisor, Principal Ryu Yoon-ha. He firmly asserted that no incident would occur. When Lee Se-hun stepped into the spotlight, murmurs rose from the stands. The MC smiled meaningfully and asked whether he could surpass the previous explosive display. Some gasped at his appearance, even wondered if it was rare equipment. A freshman shouted in support. Lee Se-hun decisively drew his sword from its sheath. He swept the blade forcefully across. His gaze locked onto the target. Behind him appeared the phantom of a sword along with a series of activated mechanisms. The male student said with both admiration and doubt that crafting rare equipment as a freshman was already a miracle, but compared to other departments it still lacked a breakthrough point. Whispers spread as several people felt disappointed, a rare piece of equipment that looked far too simple. After the dazzling displays earlier, many were confused about what he intended to do. In a corner of the stands, Michael Bamuth pressed his lips together, ambition flashing in his eyes. He stared at Lee Se-hun calculatingly, believing that the Bossipa principal seat would fall into his hand. In contrast, Unha remained calm like a still sea. The MC quickly announced that model number 10 at the level of a D-rank hero would be used, but Lee Se-hun suddenly interrupted. He raised his head, his cold gaze silenced the square, requesting a change to model number 8 and additional armor for it. The MC nearly dropped the list, stammering in shock, not understanding what he was asking for. Model number 8 could withstand attacks from a B-rank hero, yet he even wanted it equipped with extra armor. The host hesitated. That would be difficult. He said uncertainly that it would be hard to prepare immediately, inwardly worrying whether the young man was ruining the show. At that moment, Kim In-chin spoke up, saying everything had already been arranged beforehand. At his words, a metallic entity suddenly appeared in the middle of the field. It raised its head toward the automaton, as if awaiting orders. The automaton was now fully equipped with armor, leaving the MC astonished. He looked around anxiously, asking whether it had truly been prepared so thoroughly. If you have decided so, then proceed. At the same time, Lee Se-hun turned to look at Kim In-chin. He silently returned the gaze with eyes full of expectation. From the VIP stand, the MC shouted loudly to show everything he had. He gave a faint smile, thinking that now the outcome would be unpredictable. The signal to begin rang out. The battle officially started. Kim In-chin held his breath, inwardly urging him to move forward. Lee Se-hun curled his lips in response. Fine. He glanced toward Kim In-chin, telling himself he must answer that expectation. The sword in his hand blazed brightly, spiritual energy surging violently. He slightly lowered his body, energy swirling around him. Jake Myers trembled with excitement, muttering that it was utterly insane. In contrast, Han Bamuth sneered, believing it was merely flashy on the surface. For someone lacking mana, it would be difficult to control the 5-colored flame sword that inherently conflicted within itself. Without controlling it with an enormous amount of mana, the eruption could backfire on its owner, but thanks to the sheath's ability to store fire energy. Through the technique of channeling chained flames inward, Lee Se-hun murmured softly that the charging process was complete. On the other side, the automaton activated its defensive barrier. At the same time, he swung his sword powerfully, flames bursting forth along the arc of the slash. The move he unleashed made the stand sway, He briefly thought that if he ignited it now, the compressed fire spirit would. His eyes locked onto the automaton's shield, and in the decisive moment, everything erupted at once. In the stands, Michael Bamuth turned pale, as if realizing something was wrong. The MC stood agape, unable to comprehend what that reckless man intended. After a while, the thick curtain of dust gradually settled. Lee Se-hun calmly sheathed his sword. He breathed heavily in steady rhythms, then looked along the long gash stretching across the arena. He wondered whether he had gone a little too far just now. The MC hurriedly called the technical team to the center of the hall and declared the competition ended after that performance. The sound of heels echoed clearly through the grand hall. Inside the room, Lee Se-hun showed an awkward expression. Upon seeing him, Ryu Yoon-ha bowed her head in apology for making him wait due to handling the aftermath at the arena. Lee Se-hun scratched his head apologetically, saying he was the one who should apologize for causing such chaos. He admitted he should have controlled his power better, making her briefly surprised as she asked what he was talking about. He asked awkwardly whether she had called him here to scold him. Ryu Yoon-ha immediately denied it. She affirmed that was not the case. There was another purpose for inviting him. That moment her stomach suddenly made a sound. The noise caused Lee Se-hun to pause in surprise. Ryu Yoon-ha coughed softly to hide her embarrassment before continuing. In the end, she offered to pay 10 times the market price. With a resolute gaze, she asked whether he would agree to transfer the 5-colored flame sword and the fire-storing sheet. Hearing that, Lee Se-hun widened his eyes in astonishment, unable to believe what he had just heard. At that very moment, the bond with Ryu Yoon-ha was formed. Ryu Yoon-ha suddenly looked up, her tone soft and coaxing. She praised, "This truly is an excellent set of equipment." System screen flashed before Lee Se-hun, signaling that the contract with Ryu Yoon-ha had been established, showing the link level with the creator as rank 1. Lee Se-hun widened his eyes, his pupils trembling in amazement. "So fast? In my previous life I had to sacrifice countless weapons to form this bond." Lee Se-hun awkwardly replied, "Yes sir," he thought to himself. "Anyway, this is a rare chance." Magical characters appeared, system sounds echoed evenly, initiating the extraction of the contract. The announcement voice became solemn as if proclaiming a rare treasure, beginning to draw the contract from Ryu Yoon-ha. Device contract consumes iron, high-grade, masterpiece, generates heat by absorbing other metals, corrodes all iron materials and absorbs the core into itself. Absorbing iron to create mineral blood, Lee Se-hun stared blankly at the object before him. "So it's done." That moment, Ryu Yoon-ha lifted herself. "Are you planning to sell that item to me?" He quickly shook his head. "No, not at all." Hearing this, she felt a little nostalgic. "But you just said it." Outside, a voice called, "Principal, I am Kim In-chin." Stopped, his tone formal as if delivering an unpostponable command. The principal announced the award ceremony will commence immediately. Kim In-chin turned to Lee Se-hun. "May I accompany student Lee Se-hun?" She nodded lightly, her gaze deep like a still night lake. "Understood." Hun's car drove out. He glanced back secretly. "See you later then." On this side, Ryu Yoon-ha's stomach continued to call for help. Babel Academy, main building, ancient Marduk mansion. Scene shifted inside. Hun's car hurried after Kim In-chin. He reminded sternly while walking, maintained decorum before the principal. He wouldn't overlook the hall's condition during the performance. Kim In-chin paused briefly, then continued, "Still a person of a completely different level from us." He smiled faintly, his gaze calm. "You don't need to worry too much." Lee Se-hun walked quickly in. Louis Valen looked straight. "You must be student Lee Se-hun." Ascension Emperor, Principal Louis Valen, the hero who sacrificed himself in the lone battle against the demon god before reversing Gang Fan's time. One of the 6 great demon gods, his arrogance appeared in memory. Admiration surged, truly a perfectionist. Louis Valen commented, "The weapons you displayed today are extremely interesting." He sighed, "I can't say I'm not regretful, but I have high expectations for you." Hearing this, Lee Se-hun was stunned. Inside him, emotions stirred like smoldering fire. Though prepared, he still wanted to throw the 5-colored flame sword into the forge immediately. At that time, Louis Valen suggested, recognizing talent and effort, "You will receive 2 rewards." He asked seriously, "Tell me what you need." Lee Se-hun was surprised, for the first time showing clear astonishment. "2 rewards," he replied quickly. His voice clear, "I want rewards that enhance magical power and memory." As soon as he finished speaking, Louis Schubert waved his hand in the air. A symbol appeared in the void. Hun's car stared at the 2 treasures, black attire stone. Hero rank, masterpiece quality, a piece of light fell from the night, swallowing all darkness, absorbing magical power from contact. Dream ivory, average rank, Baku ivory devours dreams, contains illusory magic, connects dreams through illusory energy. He feigned bewilderment. "This is black attire stone. Dream ivory is even harder to find." Lee Se-hun sneered, barely controllable but already had an idea for use. He observed for a long time, tone light but weighty. Are you satisfied with them? Lee Se-hun bowed, words of thanks, they are truly amazing. As he left, a voice sounded, what is your thought, suspicious mirror? Only that boy received 2 rewards, unlike the usual style of the principal. Hui Valen replied, awarded because the young can comprehend. He thought silently, I see, he's like a young elder. He spoke in a low voice, proving he has depth perceptible even over a whole day. Hui Valen watched Hun's car fade down the ancient corridor. Even I cannot fully grasp the depth of that teenager. Scene focused at Marduk Mansion. Inside the classroom, the male students constantly whispered. A male student approached Han Bama. Have you eaten yet? He refused, sorry. Today I have an appointment with Senior Hogwarts. Male student gaped. Appointment with third-year valedictorian of Borship 3 stars. Han Bamuth calmly, only because the 2 families are connected so they meet often. He said he would get some advice about the academy. The student stepped closer. May I go with you just then? Hun's car entered the class. Luke looked at Han Bamuth coldly. Looking at Lee Se-hun, the whole class fell silent. His gaze fixed on Han. He shuddered, what a terrifying look. Lee Se-hun sneered, seemed to recognize his position. On this side, Ha gritted his teeth as pride was trampled. Damn, had to lose to a lower class. Classroom door swung open, Kim In-chin entered. His stern gaze swept the class. Everyone settled into their seat. Rolled his eyes, seemed everyone was fully attentive. Kim In-chin looked at the class. Since it's the first period, we will begin self-introduction. Seriously introduced, the metal bar is a reflective alloy. Sensitive to magical power dozens of times more than normal if you channel magic into it. Kim In-chin emphasized each word. A weapon in mind easily forms. Lee Se-hun looked at him with respect, not casually in the top 100 world artisans. When checking the contract stone, realized this person is indeed truly talented. Kim In-chin paused, tone deep due to sensitivity. Hard to use in combat but reflects subconscious, aids self-awareness. He explained that is why the reflective alloy is called the alternate self. Self-introduction exercises in the provincial class replaced by crafting this self. Final year, Kim In-chin reminded. Display finished product at main building for a week. Do your best, students echoed, yes sir. Lee Se-hun's gaze stopped at a male student, thinking this reflective alloy must cost over 10 million won per piece. Babel style, even the greeting scene is luxurious. Han Bamuth startled, gripped his sword, he sighed truly. Lee Se-hun sighed helplessly. No one here has the most important talent. At that moment Kim In-chin spoke. Please student Lee Se-hun, he quickly replied, yes sir. Hun's car thought already top scorer, no need to hide true ability anymore. Had a bold thought if doing it then. Hun's pupils gleamed with ambition, should he go all out. Suddenly a large explosion erupted in the class. A male student sneered, many gather here, due to Lee Se-hun's attraction. He continued mocking, funny to hype someone whose level is different, while just a first year. The person next agreed, absolutely right. A male student approached, nodded slightly, that's also what I wanted to say. 2 of them raised their heads to look at the item. Kim In-chin's voice suddenly rang out, although during the crafting process an incident occurred when it absorbed 19 nearby projection alloys. However, we believe that phenomenon revealed the talent of student Lee Se-hun. Therefore, we decided to preserve its current state for display. Male student sneered amid the murmuring crowd. It must have been a coincidence from some activated skill. The person beside him lifted his chin toward the work with jealous eyes. Was it not because he used too many alloys at once? Another chimed in. It has been a long time since the refining department had a valedictorian, so they want to promote him as a true genius. At that moment Inao Erica spoke up. I see it a little differently. Jake Myers stepped closer, curling his lips into a smile. I agree with that assessment. Jake Myers continued that the amount of projection alloy at that time seemed insufficient to fully display Lee Se-hun's potential. On the other side, the hammer face struck down decisively once more. At this moment fine beads of sweat dotted Lee Se-hun's forehead. His body trembled slightly, his hand lowered, a trace of astonishment flashing in his eye. Unbelievable, did you time it? Until now there has not been even a 0.01 second deviation. Assistant Han looked at him intently. What else can we possibly teach a student this outstanding? He chuckled softly. Let us skip his part then, and turned to ask if anyone wanted to see a demonstration. A while later Assistant Han announced, all right, class dismissed. This side Lee Se-hun was still intently staring at the hammer. Then his gaze shifted down to the metal fragments beneath the table. Without hesitation, Se-hun raised the hammer high again. Assistant Han quickly spoke up. Are you going to destroy it? He immediately stopped and bowed to the assistant instructor. He stepped closer and reminded him that after this week's forging session the items had to be handed over, so do not damage them. Sehun tilted his head and asked they have to be handed back. Assistant Han sighed. Where do you think the funding comes from? Babel provides support based on the number of weapons sold on the market. He pondered for a moment and asked, so what exactly are you dissatisfied with, stamina or mana capacity? Faced with that question, Lee Sehun smiled. My biggest issue right now is my physical condition. A thought flashed through his mind. To craft training tools he needed to forge basalt stone, yet his endurance was insufficient. Assistant Han tilted his head and suggested, if it is truly necessary for your training. After some consideration, he proposed that using enhancement charms would be faster than building physical strength. Hearing that, he laughed. Before returning to the past, I always avoided this method, so I never considered it. The corner of Sehun's lips curved up. Since I have returned and lack stamina, I can forge basalt stone under the effect of enhancement charm. He lowered his head to thank him for the useful advice. Assistant Han shook his head, saying it was nothing. Sehun raised his head to look at the sword in his hand and reminded that he was using more mana than necessary. Reduce it to 70% and concentrate the force at a single point. Before leaving, Lee Sehun affirmed that doing so would be more effective at this time. Assistant Han could only laugh awkwardly, a freshman giving advice to an assistant instructor. After that, he turned back to look at the hammer. Weather grew increasingly stifling. Babel encouraged proactive self-study. The system voice rang out as the doors opened, followed by the instructor's announcement. Students may register for classes from other departments or take multiple courses in one semester. However, they must complete their major courses. If they fail 3 times, they will be expelled. Freedom of choice, but responsibility rests with oneself. The announcement echoed. The next stop is the magic department zone. Sehun stepped off the train calmly. As soon as he raised his head, he encountered Inao Erika appearing unexpectedly. A male student blocked the way with a provocative tone. Stop standing in the way, move aside. Lee Sehun frowned. Who were these people to suddenly cause trouble? He raised his voice in reply. You are the ones who should move. The male student trembled in anger. Inao Erika stepped closer. She asked curiously, where are you going? The male student was stunned when she appeared, while Sehun honestly replied that he was going to the magic department to look for an elective to register for. Hearing that, she said decisively, let me lead you there. The male student hurriedly interrupted to remind her about the upcoming meeting. She coldly told them to go on their own. He anxiously said the seniors were expecting her presence. Erika glanced over indifferently. I have no interest. Turning back to Sehun, her gaze was calm. Two quickly left despite the calls behind them. The surroundings gradually quieted as Erika began to walk faster. She looked at him seriously and asked what kind of elective he was seeking. Sehun replied that he wanted to learn about enhancement charms. She asked for more specifics. Specifically which type, he said calmly. He needed something that enhanced physical condition without affecting the forging process. Erika suggested trying barrier techniques. Sehun was surprised because he thought they were only for defense. She explained that they varied greatly depending on usage, then took out a thin sheet of paper. He gestured and handed the sheet to him as an example. Here, try tearing it. Sehun took it, sensing the layer of mana surrounding it, and wondered if its durability had increased. In fact, not exactly. Paper retained its original properties, but would become harder when subjected to strong force. Sehun analyzed attentively that this technique was very suitable for forging because it required delicate control. Erika smiled and said with such complex applications, he should ask the professor for guidance. He looked at the formula on the paper and found it familiar. She added that the professor teaching barrier techniques was related by marriage to her family. Therefore, I can introduce you if you wish. Erika smiled softly, awaiting his response. Suddenly, Sehun exclaimed, this is it, and tore the paper apart, causing her brief confusion. Have you understood and dismantled my family's barrier technique in such a short time? Morning at the University Magic Department. The sight of Lee Sehun walking beside her across the courtyard surprised everyone and sparked whispers about why she was accompanying a student from another department. Someone said they saw them together yesterday as well, the same at the previous exhibition. Amid curious gazes, he sighed at how quickly rumors spread. How laughable that they meddled in others' affairs. If Erika truly had feelings, there would already be a clear bond. Even so, he wondered what the criteria for selecting classes were when registration still required an assessment. Erika introduced this as the place where the barrier structure test was held. Sehun looked around and asked, is it this forest? The other candidates grumbled in frustration about why the location was so remote. He thought to himself, was this an exam or a treasure hunt? This was truly troublesome. Perhaps they were using a barrier to conceal something. By chance he stepped on a strange point, causing the barrier around the forest to instantly dissipate. When the barrier layer beneath Sehun's feet shattered, the assistant instructor appeared and announced that he had passed the test. He stood stunned, only managing to utter his astonishment. The robot looked at the assistant instructor suspiciously and asked, "Does that young lady care about our department's valedictorian again, Professor Robert Burry, who specializes in barrier structures at Earth?" The assistant handed his phone to him and replied, "That is correct. Look at this list." He looked at the list, then said doubtfully, "I was also surprised that she registered for such a basic class. That is precisely why the number of candidates has tripled, yet I do not feel pleased at all. Because there was also a suggestion from the young master of the Enao family. Today we will add a new test called the Labyrinth of Lost Souls. Labyrinth of Lost Souls. This is a type of barrier that distorts the senses, causing those inside to lose direction. Although it is only a basic level, for someone unfamiliar with magic, they might not even realize they are covered." Seeing the scene before him, Robert Burry was stunned. He could not help but acknowledge the student's true ability. Even without the young lady's aid, he still broke the labyrinth purely by instinct. He declared firmly to everyone, "All of you have passed the first round. From now on, we will sort classes based on the second test." A confident student raised his hand, "May I go first?" In his mind he calculated, this is a rare chance to earn points before Enao Erica. Robert Burry nodded, agreed. The second task is simple. Use your magic to dismantle the activated barrier before you. I will grade according to completion time. Therefore be both fast and accurate. Again, a web-like barrier appeared with a spider at its center, acting as the hub. The spider would continuously evade when sensing magic along the threads. As long as it existed, the network would endlessly regenerate. Before the barrier, the volunteering student hesitated. He thought if he covered the entire structure normally, his magic would be insufficient. In that case, I will use speed to pressure it. He checked the clock and commented, 2 minutes 23 seconds. You should focus more on understanding the barrier's structure. Still, this result is acceptable. Students secretly looked toward the young lady for encouragement, but Enao Erica's face remained calm as a still lake. He could only bow in response. "Thank you, Professor," Robert Burry continued. He decisively ordered next person. "Hurry up one by one." After all were done, he announced everyone would start from the basic class. "Next is Enao Erica, you may begin." She stepped forward calmly. She lightly touched the barrier with a single finger. The entire ring of the barrier flashed, and then dissolved into countless fragments in the silent space. Students around were amazed and stunned. Murmurs rose, "How can it be this fast?" It separated all the components, causing the barrier to collapse completely. Truly the level of a top student, eliciting awe. Robert Burry slowly approached, looked at the clock and said, 22 seconds, well done. But using standard methods it could have been 2 seconds faster. Before this sternness, Enao Erica only bowed calmly, "I will remember." He remained silent. His sharp gaze shifted to the next candidate as a reminder of strict standards, then called the name. Finally, Lee Sehun. Observing how he stepped forward, Robert evaluated silently. He appeared unremarkable. Let's see his actual ability. Instead of casting magic immediately, he calmly sat before the barrier. Students whispered, "What is he doing? Don't they know the timer has started?" Sehun remained composed, his eyes focused on analyzing each layer of the barrier's structure. This barrier is like inkstone in its self-repair ability if the impact does not reach a certain threshold. Therefore, forging that type of stone, the smith must exert full force in a single moment with precise proportion. Robert Burry grew impatient, stepped forward and asked, "What exactly are you doing?" "Wait," Enao Erica's voice rang out to stop him. "Let him proceed." Facing this firm request, Robert remained silent. He pursed his lips and stepped back. In the silent space, Lee Sehun's mind operated at full speed. "If I do it this way, I can preserve the accumulated resources inside instead of letting them dissipate." When his finger touched the key point, the entire barrier suddenly flared intensely. Amid the stunned atmosphere, Lee Sehun calmly spoke. That was all it took to forge the inkstone. He stood up. He stepped over the fragments as if they had never been a concern. The barrier dissolved and he decisively left, ignoring all gazes. The assistant announced, 7 minutes 45 seconds. Robert looked at Sehun's back and thought, "Time no longer matters. Today it took 7 minutes, but next time with a similar barrier, he will resolve it instantly." He not only dismantled it, but also created his own formula for its resolution. Enao Erica watched that back with a thoughtful gaze. He thought, if that formidable forging skill combines with magic, I wonder what he will create. A notice was sent. We have received an application for intermediate forging using hero-grade materials from first-year student Lee Sehun. According to Safety Rule 8, anyone wishing to supervise, please contact us. Lecturer looked at the computer screen, wondering how many would register this time. Messages poured in continuously, astonishing him, such fast responses. However, no one from Vice Principal Michael Bamuth's side applied. Apparently that side is tense because his son was demoted to second rank. It seems the rumor is true. The lecturer began to consider. So whom should I select? He widened his eyes in surprise. The message stated the principal will personally supervise Lee Sehun's intermediate forging. Suddenly Yoonha appeared, long time no see, student Lee Sehun. He paused, surprised, so busy yet still personally arrives. She replied calmly, as principal, I want to witness your ability firsthand. Sehun did not look straight but only replied, if that is the case, I will devote all my focus to forging. With that, he immediately began crafting. The first step of forging the ink stone. There are many ways to handle this stone, but the hardest is the night process. The stone must be placed in complete darkness, then magic used to separate impurities from the spreading ink layer like a liquid. Even a small mistake in magic control, the stone will harden and become useless. Sounds simple, but it is essentially like restructuring matter. Yoonha quietly observed each of Sehun's movements. His hands moved steadily while his mind calculated coldly, a quarter being the optimal limit. Any less performance would be insufficient. Step 2. He unleashed a blazing red flame in his palm. The intense heat enveloped the metal block, making the space seem to tremble. The surrounding air twisted with Sehun's breathing. He channeled magic through the dark red flame to filter the suitable heat. A stable flame is called crushing flame transmission, retaining its temperature as form. Third, using a hammer coated with crushing flame transmission, strike the ink stone continuously. Do not stop until deformation reduces due to the fire's property. Watching that red flame, Ryu Yoonha thought, even fire immunity does not mean feeling no pain. How far has he pushed himself? He swung the hammer repeatedly with near-extreme focus. Hammer's sound echoed throughout the forge. In a corner of the campus, Inao Erika quietly waited for Lee Sehun. Despite Lee Sehun being so focused that he forgot everything around him, the woman beside him appeared indifferent. Ryu Yoonha kept yawning from drowsiness. Face clearly showed exhaustion after 4 hours of relentless work in the forge. After absorbing the flames to their maximum threshold, the properties of the ink stone began to change abnormally. He let out a soft breath, the words "it is done" echoing in his mind. Distortion ceased, the processed ink stone gradually melted into liquid. He poured the solution into the prepared mold. The fatigue on Ryu Yoonha's face instantly vanished, replaced by astonishment as she realized he was casting rather than forging. The darkness hidden deep within the mold would alter its properties. She could not understand what he was planning in the fourth step. As Lee Sehun was about to continue, Yoonha suddenly spoke to stop him. Wait. Ignoring the interruption, he continued working, his mind filled only with numbers and magical structures operating to slow the transformation of the ink stone using a limit-breaking formula. At the same time, he constructed a mana circuit in that fleeting moment, and once the circuit took shape, all movement suddenly stilled. Lee Sehun's hand now was the final product, a deep black ink spider bracelet. When the bracelet was completed, a mechanical sound rang out, shattering the silence. The system panel appeared announcing that the permanent item ink spider bracelet had been completed. Although the material's potential had not been fully exploited, the craftsman's creative skill reached excellence. You have obtained a new skill. E-rank black soul thread, rare grade ink spider bracelet, average quality. The bracelet, created from heavy ink stone, possessed the ability to absorb the wearer's mana. Its weight increased according to the amount of stored mana, and it could also activate the detonation ring skill. Space fell silent. Lee Sehun exhaled softly and said, "It is done." In that quiet atmosphere, Ryu Yoonha's stomach suddenly growled clearly. He paused and looked at her in confusion, while she blushed and quickly covered her stomach in embarrassment. Lee Sehun could only look up at the ceiling and sigh helplessly. Ryu Yoonha observed the bracelet and concluded it was likely a resonance phenomenon, quite interesting despite its simple appearance. However, its current power was not truly outstanding. If developed properly, it could form a set effect. He calmly handed the item to her. "I apologize for not being able to give you a weapon when you were troubled because of me. Please accept this as a small compensation." After speaking, he still held out his hand, his gaze fixed directly on her. She accepted it and unexpectedly activated the special soul furnace skill. Ryu Yoonha tried it and remarked that it was quite good, making him ask in surprise, "Is that so?" He replied casually that figuratively speaking the flavor was like something deep fried. Lee Se-hun felt relieved, wondering if he had unconsciously made everything suit her taste. Thinking that he smiled and said, "I am very glad you like it." She nodded but also felt regret because she had to use it while there were many other items. By the way, she asked when he would handle the 5-colored flame sword and the fire-storing sheet. He calmly replied that he had no intention of selling them, making her ask in surprise whether the price was not attractive enough. He said he would keep them for the upcoming conquest class, then smiled and thought that hunger was the best seasoning. He promised that when there was equipment worthy enough he would inform her first, and she blushed slightly, saying she would wait. She asked whether the forging was finished. He confirmed and she nodded. "Then let us leave, the staff will clean up." He replied, "Luckily I am also out of strength." As he was walking, he suddenly felt dizzy and fell backward, and she caught him in time. Yu Yunha asked worriedly if he was all right. He reassured her that he was fine. "Perhaps I did not distribute my stamina properly." He suggested, "Let me take you back to the dormitory, or are you afraid of heights?" Lee Se-hun firmly said, "I am not afraid." Immediately she lifted him in a princess carry, leaving him no time to react, then said, "Let us go." He gathered momentum and shot through the air like a bolt of lightning. While carrying him, she felt the abundant energy from the bracelet and secretly marveled at its power. Held tightly and flying at dizzying speed, Lee Se-hun could only helplessly let his thoughts wander. Everything now was vastly different from before he returned to the past. At this moment, Inao Erika was still patiently waiting for him on the school grounds. She wondered why Lee Se-hun had not yet appeared to accept her invitation. On the Babel Alchemy Department forum, an anonymous account posted a photo of Inao Erika and raised a question. Many wondered why the top student of the combat department had stood in front of the alchemy building for 3 hours. Was she waiting for the Bossapa top student? The comments argued heatedly, and Lee Se-hun also read them. He wondered what exactly was going on, then told himself that if it was important they would find him again. Just then the classroom door burst open. A middle-aged man walked in, introducing himself as Ricardo Smiles, in charge of the tool comprehension course from today onward. He knocked on the door to draw attention and ordered the entire class to head to the training center. Whoever arrived last would run 20 laps. As soon as he finished speaking, the students rushed outside, complaining about why they had to run. Lee Se-hun joined the crowd, wondering was this not supposed to be a theory class. Someone else replied, "Who knows, just run first." In the end, everyone arrived. Lee Se-hun was punished to complete all 20 laps. As he ran, he responded, "Yes, I am doing it." Around him, whispers spread that his stamina was too poor, and they questioned his intermediate forging ability. After a while, Ricardo Smiles called everyone to gather. He explained that this course originally taught the theory of equipment structure, but due to the fire sword hunting incidents, the method had to change. There were currently individuals targeting blacksmiths capable of forging hero-grade fire swords. They were called fire sword hunters. While running and listening, Lee Se-hun remembered that before turning back time, this incident had still not been resolved, and the teacher said that no matter how strong the defense was, it was not equal to oneself. Ricardo Smiles emphasized that besides researching tools, they also had to learn self-defense skills. The whole class responded clearly, "Sir." Ricardo Smiles spoke with a satisfied tone. "Very good. Today our lesson will revolve around the subject of the sword." Lee Se-hun silently reminded himself that this time, he absolutely had to act more cautiously than before. He strode forward repeatedly, telling himself that to achieve that goal he first had to improve his own physical strength. Lee Se-hun lightly clenched his hand, silently evaluating that although he had crafted it himself, this item truly worked beyond expectation. The system displayed detailed information about the bracelet made from ink stone, capable of absorbing the wearer's mana to increase its weight accordingly, storing that energy and allowing the activation of the explosive circle skill, which adjusted gravity within a 1-meter radius around the user. Observing the status panel on the system, he set a goal for himself upon seeing that the basic parameters had increased by an average of about 5 points, and resolved that before the end of his first year, he would strengthen this body at all costs. Only after a while did Ricardo Smiles call for Lee Se-hun to stop, telling him to stop running and return, while he quietly looked down at his own hand as if he had just grasped something new. He observed in silence before commenting that Lee Se-hun's physical condition seemed much better than he had initially thought. Ricardo Smiles held the sword out toward him and suggested he try swinging it to see whether he was suited for studying swordsmanship. Lee Se-hun took the sword and observed it for a moment, thinking that the ink stone bracelet might make his movements less agile. He hesitated inwardly because it was not a formally refined technique, yet he still wondered whether he should try to use it. In the end, Lee Se-hun decisively swung the sword down with force. A few trainees outside laughed mockingly, saying he was too slow and must have been tired after the run. Even so, his striking posture did not look bad. In contrast, Ricardo had a completely different assessment. He believed it was truly an outstanding sword strike. The sword in his hand seemed to have clearly determined the trajectory it was heading toward. He turned and advised that the rhythm was still somewhat rushed. It would be best to adjust that point before advancing further. Sehun's gaze suddenly turned cold and sharp as a blade. Ricardo Smiles's entire body trembled slightly. Within his sight, everything seemed to be covered in a pale white hue, leaving Ricardo Smiles stunned. He became flustered when he realized the blade was already pressed close to his throat. Ricardo Smiles questioned whether he had truly felt apprehensive before a technical student to the point of producing such a frightening illusion. He hesitantly asked who had taught him that sword technique. Lee Sehun merely smiled in response. Yet inside he was in turmoil, unable to understand why that move was so effective when that person had said it was conceived in just 10 minutes of inspiration. Sehun recalled the past when Wang Su scratched his ear and said that next time he would repay that debt to him. He had also complained that being short of money at times was normal in life. Why did he have to press him so fiercely? Wang Su kept pleading to exchange a technique for money and promised to teach him one move if he agreed to stop. Returning to reality, Lee Sehun scratched his head and fabricated that he often watched recordings of heroic battle. Though not completely convinced, Ricardo still smiled and asked whether he truly wanted to receive formal swordsmanship training. He proposed that he would write a recommendation letter for him to join the body control class at AGA QUF. That afternoon at the AGA QUF center, Sehun stood among the crowd with a bewildered expression. Wang Su stomped his foot in frustration, insisting that he had said many times he had nothing left to teach. But Jake Myers still earnestly begged him not to treat him like that. He was originally a retired S-rank hero and also a regular customer here. Wang Su was known by the nickname Swordbreaker. Lee Sehun found it hard to believe that the man who was drunk all day and gambled recklessly was actually a professor. Seeing him appear, Wang Su asked who he was. Sehun handed over the recommendation letter and introduced himself as a first-year metallurgy student recommended by Professor Ricardo Smile. He asked in surprise about being recommended by Ricardo, while Jake Myers staggered to his feet and said that the kid was this year's top student of the Borsapa department. He bluntly remarked that no matter how he looked at him, he only seemed ordinary. Wang Su looked at Sehun and asked whether he truly yearned to learn from him, receiving a firm yes in reply. During that, he immediately pointed toward Lee Sehun and laid down a condition. He said if he could defeat that man, then he would agree to take him in. He arranged a single-round match. Whoever landed a valid hit on the opponent first would be the winner. Wang Su waved his hand to signal the start. As soon as the match began, Jake Myers immediately rushed forward. In contrast, Lee Sehun remained standing in place, gripping the sword tightly in his hand. Wang Su silently questioned whether relaxing the body to eliminate muscle tension was the optimal way to maximize agility. If so, the simplest countermeasure would likely be to close in and grapple instead of launching a direct strike. Meanwhile, Jake Myers had already swung his arm to attack. Wang Su sighed in boredom, thinking he disliked the type who only calculated gains and losses without fighting properly. There was truly nothing interesting about it. Immediately afterward, Jake Myers rushed in and tightly grabbed Lee Sehun around the waist. Sehun gritted his teeth in surprise at that situation. He was inwardly astonished by that unpredictable strength. He told himself that everything was not over yet. He immediately activated the explosive circle skill. Energy from it burst forth into a radiant stream of light. Thanks to that, Sehun managed to turn the tide. He hissed softly from the fleeting pain. Sehun's fist stopped right in front of his opponent's face. From Jake Myers' nose, pale red droplets slowly fell. Sehun smiled and asked whether he was a bit faster. Surrounding space quickly fell silent. After a while, Jake Myers finally spoke about the previous attack. Before he could finish speaking, Wang Su had already dismissed everyone and reminded that he had only promised to teach if he won. Hearing that, Sehun sat up and said that since the opponent had lost, the teacher should teach him. He even mocked that it was hard to believe the top student of Agar QF had lost to a Borsapa department student. Just hearing it felt humiliating, leaving Jake Myers stunned. Seeing that, Wang Su nodded and said perhaps he should discipline that fool so he would be capable of taking care of himself. He said he would arrange the time and inform them later, and told them to remember to arrive on time, making Jake Myers overjoyed. He bowed sincerely in thanks, while Wang Su waved his hand and said that once finished they could leave. After that he turned and said he still had private matters to discuss with Lee Se-hun. When the room was left with only the two of them, Wang Su asked Se-hun to recreate the sword move used earlier, and he quickly agreed. Se-hun looked at him with obvious tension. He dashed forward, the sharp blade slicing through the air in his hand. In a blink, Se-hun's sword was knocked from his hand by Wang Su. He stood stunned as he heard him remark that it was a move meant to take down the opponent in the very first instant. Wang Su coldly said the idea was not bad, but the execution was too clumsy. A technique that revealed flaws the second time could not be considered complete. He irritably scolded that if anyone dared to teach this move to others, and even praised it as good, he would not let him off, unaware that he himself had once taught it. Wang Su sighed and said to just wait and see. He would rebuild a solid foundation based on that loose technical framework. Se-hun frankly asked if that meant he had officially been accepted into the class, and Wang Su firmly confirmed that was correct. Hearing that, he felt relieved, said goodbye and asked permission to leave first. After Se-hun left, Wang Su glanced after him and remarked that the boy was truly too stubborn. Just as he stepped outside, Lee Se-hun let out an irritated sigh, acting as if he were something noble when in truth he was only carrying out after-sales service. At that moment, Jake Myers approached and greeted him. "Hey, you there?" He paused slightly before replying, "You are still here, not leaving yet." Jake Myers immediately took out an envelope and expressed his intent. "I have something I want to give you." Lee Se-hun was taken aback and asked, "What is this?" He explained that it was an invitation to join Nobracy, a place that gathered students from prestigious families. Lee Se-hun suddenly understood. Perhaps Inao Erica had intended to give it to him earlier. Jake Myers said excitedly that the place was full of arrogant people, "But I believe this will be a good opportunity for you." However, Lee Se-hun still hesitated. "I am not sure I should casually accept this." He smiled brightly and said, "It was thanks to you that I got into that class, so at the very least I must express my gratitude." Seeing that, Lee Se-hun smiled in return, "Thank you." A while later on the road, he quietly considered that the elective subjects he had registered for were barrier structure and body control. Perhaps he should try adding one more subject from the Borsapa department. In his mind, he was wavering between curses, alchemy, and enhancement. Lost in thought, he accidentally bumped into someone. Se-hun halted and spoke up, "Sorry." Looking up, his gaze suddenly froze. A girl had grabbed his wrist, studying it intently before asking, "Did you create this yourself?" "No," Se-hun denied firmly, "but what if I did?" He suggested, "Then let me try enhancing it for you." The system immediately displayed a notification. A link with the target named Leoclodal has been established. Leoclodal was a genius in the field of enhancement, capable of upgrading equipment by 2 tiers. The one who once crafted items that reached the legendary level. She was known as the figure who shook the entire enhancement industry. Leoclodal exclaimed in shock, "Ink stone, and it is rare grade." She analyzed enthusiastically, "Just add a few more formulas." "No, its potential goes far beyond that." Then Leah clutched her head and lamented, "No, how should I handle such a difficult problem?" Witnessing that scene, Lee Se-hun thought in surprise that she was unexpectedly unusual and asked, "Is there something wrong with this equipment?" Leah quickly explained, "The trouble is that I have too many ideas for it. It is forged from inkstone, yet its compatibility is astonishingly high. Too many formulas can be applied, which leaves me unsure which direction to choose." Hearing that, Se-hun placed another item on the table and said, "If so, then this should be useful." Seeing her still confused, he reminded, "That is not all." Lee Se-hun carefully added, "It also has a resonance phenomenon, so remember to pay attention to that point." Leah asked excitedly, "Who exactly are you?" He replied calmly, "I am Lee Se-hun, a first-year student of the metallurgy department and the top of Borsapa 5. Eyes widened in shock. "A first year? That is hard to believe. I am a third-year student of the enhancement department." At that moment, another person approached and interrupted, "I have something to say, follow me for a moment." Lee Se-hun recognized him as a subordinate of Inao Erica. Leoclodal stood up in displeasure. "Do you not see we are talking?" He lowered his voice and said, "I want to settle this peacefully, so give me a few minutes." Se-hun replied coldly, "If there is something to say, then say it here." He sighed and requested that you apologize to Lady Inao Erica for your rude attitude. You tore up the invitation she gave in front of everyone. Lee Se-hun said in surprise, "But she told me to tear it up." His eyes flared with anger. "Fine, you have your reasons. If only you had not accepted the invitation from the Myers family." Se-hun asked irritably, "Did Inao Erica send you here?" He hurriedly denied it. "Oh, this is entirely my personal decision." Claudel let out a mocking laugh. How convincing. He said bluntly, everyone knows you are the young master's trusted guard. Those words made him even more furious. He shouted, a nobody like you dares to act so arrogantly. Perhaps you are deluding yourself into thinking you are special. He continued to attack Lee Sehun. Babel lacks no geniuses far beyond you. But Sehun could not be bothered, replying indifferently, are you talking about yourself? The words struck him like a direct blow. The man flew into a rage and shouted, shut up. Despite witnessing his rising aura, Lee Sehun calmly extended his hand. With just one hand, he blocked the phantom beasts charging forward. Surrounding magic power suddenly dispersed. He pondered, just as I thought, that thing is not formed from pure magic power alone. You used the longsword as a conduit to launch the attack even if it was only an illusion. He trembled and stammered, how could you possibly know? Sehun lightly twirled the weapon in his hand and replied, who knows? He laughed excitedly, this sounds interesting. At the same time, the system announced that the link mark greedy iron had been activated. He cried out in despair, my 1,000,000 troops are as good as gone. Lee Sehun curled his lips and said with such an exquisite taste, no wonder people go mad for it. The system continued to display information. Link Ryu Unha Supreme High Quality Greedy Iron. A type of iron that can generate heat by devouring other metals, corroding upon contact and absorbing their cores within, hunting iron to create mineral blood, remaining durability 78%. An energy circle flared up in an instant, and Lee Sehun had already dashed forward. He threw a punch straight into the opponent's abdomen. The man dropped to his knees and collapsed on the spot. Lee Sehun turned to Leah Claudel and said, then I will take my leave, senior. He looked at her and asked, is there any subject in the enhancement department worth my studying? Leah's cheeks suddenly flushed red. He replied, ancient enhancement. There is a very outstanding senior there named Leah Claudel. After they left, the man clutched his stomach and groaned, what bad luck. He muttered in disbelief that a freshman could have such astonishing reflexes. At that moment, Inao Erica appeared in front and said, sorry, I would like to borrow that longsword for a look. He was startled and exclaimed, Lady Inao Erica, when did you arrive? The subordinate immediately respectfully presented the sword. Here it is, my lady. Inao Erica examined the sword and said, you do not need to report this matter to my brother. As for the head of the family, I will personally discuss it later. He scratched his head and replied, yes, I understand. Inao Erica silently assessed that it was indeed equipment used as a conduit and had been engraved with a special inscription. She wondered whether he had created a counterattack skill based on his own magic and Professor Robert Burry. A strange feeling arose within her. Lee Sehun's forging talent might even surpass S rank. I must raise his magic compatibility evaluation to a rank. The system suddenly announced that a link with Inao Erica had been established. Lee Sehun was briefly confused. What is happening? He speculated whether she had secretly observed the duel earlier. Sehun held the remaining blades and thought helplessly, at least I was somewhat compensated. Still, 10 blades short, leaving it like this is rather crude, but combined with the H-link thread it will be fine. He yawned and muttered, let us set it aside for now. I once looked forward to Professor Kim In-chen's class, but did not expect today to be nothing but dry theory that I already know. Immediately afterward, Kim In-chen said sternly, the explanation is enough. Now we move to the main content. He held the object on the lectern and said, even if you use the same type of metal, its form will completely change depending on how you adjust your magic power. A stone appeared as he spoke. The application of metal deformation techniques determines the flexibility of a weapon. He placed more stones on the table. Kim In-chen transformed them back into their original iron color and declared that if you choose the path of a blacksmith, you must fully grasp the potential of the metal you handle. He announced that today we will practice deformation techniques on these iron ingots. He distributed stones and instructed first control your magic power to create a groove about 3 cm deep in the center of the iron ingot. This tool is extremely sensitive to deformation, so careful operation is required. In his heart, Lee Sehun thought at last he does not completely deny the method of forging with magic. Kim In-chen clearly declared, ban time is set at 10 minutes. All of you may begin immediately from now. Trainees held the iron bars in confusion, unable to understand why this situation had happened to them. Some kept adjusting them, but they refused to return to their original shape. At that very moment, 2 people suddenly stepped forward. Lee Sehun calmly stated that he had finished. Han Bamoth also glanced over and reported that he had completed it. Kim In-chen nodded in satisfaction, praised them, and allowed the 2 to move on to the next training segment. After that, he continued to present another requirement. they would try an entirely new arrangement model. They were to proceed according to this diagram and apply it themselves. Han Bamoth looked toward Sehun with confidence, feeling that his speed and level of completion were equal to his. This time he must surpass him. Meanwhile, Kim In-chin continued explaining in detail the next layout form. He quickly began working with rising confidence, thinking that his opportunity had finally arrived. Han Bamoth eagerly told himself he would complete it perfectly and leave everyone astonished. However, as soon as he finished, Kim In-chin asked Han Bamoth to try restoring the iron bar to its original state. Han Bamoth stood stunned and asked what the teacher had just said, and when he attempted it, he truly fell into confusion. He lamented inwardly why everything had turned out this way, a clear sense of helplessness rising within him. Only then did he realize that the order of the magic currents had been completely disrupted. Seeing this, Kim In-chin explained that the iron bar could not withstand the previous alteration, which proved that his method had been wrong from the start, and he hurriedly argued that he had followed the instructions correctly. He slightly lowered his head and emphasized that what he had said before was to fully understand the inherent potential of the metal. Kim In-chin continued to criticize. If one could not restore the affected magic structure, then it was no longer a transformation, but a severe degradation of the equipment. It would become a major factor affecting quality and performance. Therefore, in the future, he needed to study more carefully. Hearing that, Han Bamoth bowed his head and said he would remember the lesson. He glanced at Sehun and wondered whether he had truly grasped the key point. In the end, he reassured himself that it was probably just luck on his part. Yet right after that Sehun succeeded, the iron bar was truly returned to its original state. The scene left the entire class stunned. The teacher had just said that method was unfeasible, yet how could this be? Even Kim In-chin was surprised and asked Lee Sehun to perform the previous transformation technique once more. Sehun thought he had accidentally caused the teacher to misunderstand, then explained that it only worked because this was iron specially refined for trainees. Standard iron could not achieve it. Observing everything, Kim In-chin suddenly understood that the issue lay in the responsiveness of the specially treated iron bar. He pondered deeply and was surprised that he himself had overlooked that important detail. A man who had once reached the pinnacle and was a renowned master blacksmith. Saint Fire Likens had created this when he was still an S-rank hero, and through decades it continued to be remembered. Till now, no one had been capable of denying its value. That transformation formula was regarded as the foundation of all blacksmiths, almost an unchanging truth within the field. Thinking so, Kim In-chin hesitated briefly, whether he could find a different path and whether he should believe in that possibility. Lee Sehun turned away, thinking that if he discovered it again then, this would already be the second consecutive time. Outside, the sky gradually darkened. Kim In-chin announced the end of class and dismissed them. He called Lee Sehun to stay. He stopped and politely asked what the teacher needed to tell him. Kim In-chin took out an item and said it was a congratulatory gift for enrollment, thanking him for helping during the move to Babel. The system displayed information about a high-quality rare blood flame, a type of ore containing deep crimson flame essence capable of melting composite ore into liquid form. Sehun hesitated slightly as he asked about the item. He explained that if he absorbed the essence of this fire gem, his blood flame would be permanently strengthened. During that, he happily thanked him and said this gift would greatly support his training process. Kim In-chin then asked whether he intended to register for the supplementary course personally taught by him. Sehun calmly replied that it was the basic equipment research course, surprising him that he also knew of it. Casually confirmed that he did know and inwardly evaluated it as one of the classes most heavily funded by Babel. Sehun briefly wondered because before turning back time, he had never heard the name Kim In-chin. Perhaps this professor future had not been very favorable. Yet in the present, he was a lecturer who drew attention and high evaluation. After a moment of thought, Sehun decided to register for the course. Kim In-chin worried that he had chosen too many supplementary subjects. He calmly replied that even with this subject it was only his forte. Kim In-chin said nothing further, shook his hand and expressed anticipation for future cooperation. Sehun politely responded. At the same time, the system notified that it was extracting a link from Kim In-chin. The link level with the creator Lee Sehun was currently level 1. Link information stated high-grade fire-bearing iron of below-average quality, a type of metal containing internal fire properties and possessing wood-like characteristics in its ability to retain flame. Sehun pondered that if he could extract metal from another body, then it also meant he could temper the human body itself. When multiple attribute magic powers coexisted within one body, they would conflict with one another. That was extremely dangerous for a blacksmith who required high precision. Therefore, using only one suitable attribute had become an unspoken rule. However, he himself was different. The magic power used to suppress temperature was gradually being consumed in a controlled manner. When his body was nearly emptied of magic power, it began absorbing the essence of the deep crimson blood flame. As a blacksmith, he needed to establish a separate magic circuit within his own body dedicated to that flame. After a while, Sehun let out a light breath of relief as he fully understood the issue. Only in that way could he carry out the forging process within himself. The system reported that the attribute magic power had increased from F rank blood flame to E+ rank blood flame. A series of notifications appeared. You have comprehended the S rank skill spirit body forging magic. The body is the most primordial material, and when the magic circuits are tempered, the physique and strength will surge. His basic stats all improved significantly. Lee Sehun possessed Strength D105, Endurance D100, Magic Power D119, and Speed E87. Sehun gritted his teeth and muttered about spirit body forging magic. He recalled his previous life, when Leoclaudal questioned him for wanting to give up despite having materials in hand. He laughed and said he was not a fool, so why would he choose to resign himself like that? Returning to the present, he smiled resolutely and told himself to make full use of everything available. Whether the other party was friend or foe, this time he would not allow himself any more regret. In the vast stone building, the instructor announced that today they would complete the previously crafted products to supply both inside and outside the academy. Red-haired young man standing before the class declared that today results would determine the situation of the first semester, so everyone had to give their all. The entire class responded in unison, understood, while Lee Sehun silently observed the iron bar in his hand and calculated. Everything became chaotic because his current body had not yet caught up with his reflexes, causing many details to deviate. Holding the hammer, he told himself this was no longer a time to hesitate. The flames surged violently, waves of heat sweeping across the space. Boiling pot emitted thick steam. Sehun held the long metal bar, observing and judging that the result was barely acceptable. However, he was still worried because little time remained. If he only produced an average piece, he might receive support but would not achieve a breakthrough. Placing the iron bar on the grindstone, he decided to pour all his devotion into creating at least one truly outstanding item. His hands moved swiftly, grinding and refining every line on the iron bar. He stood there in intense concentration. Sound echoed in Sehun's mind like a signal that a significant moment was approaching. His gaze lowered. Whenever he heard that familiar sound, he would create an exceptional work. All his spirit focused on the blade taking shape, not merely a fleeting sharpness, but a light deeply engraved into the blade flaring brilliantly. Information about white radiance appeared clearly. The longsword was complete. A master blacksmith always instilled his will into the most basic details, and the craft of fully exploiting material potential had forged a blade worthy of its name. A notification appeared, indicating that he had acquired the skill named Radiant Stream C. 2 gleaming swords materialized with detailed information. White light longsword, rare grade, superior quality. This is a longsword with a pure white blade, meticulously honed and infused with magic, making it both durable and sharp. A masterwork of an experienced craftsman, the cutting power activates when magical energy is channeled. Seeing the newly completed weapon, he exhaled in relief considering it was made from ordinary iron. The result was quite satisfactory. He hoped that looking at this weapon would gradually restore skills from the Gang Fan era, even if only partially. The two knights behind him held their swords anxiously. He truly disliked this feeling, perhaps reconsider dropping out. The following Saturday, the red-haired young man sat in a cafe, focused on his phone. A voice rang out, "Really? You want to witness my enhancement technique?" Lee Sehun observed the street. "Actually, I'm curious about her basic skills as well. This place is crowded." Leah Claudel beside him was also watching. "Don't worry too much. My workshop is much quieter." He arrived at a peaceful farm and asked, "This place is a bit far, right? You think it's easy to observe my technique?" She led him into the AgaQF metal workshop. "This is the place." She stepped in and called out loudly, "Ma'am." Her voice echoed, "I'm here." Helena sat twiddling her pinky. "I'm not deaf. Why yell like that?" Lee Sehun followed behind, looking irritated at her question. "Who is the kid with you, her boyfriend?" Leah Claudel stood in front and replied, "That's not correct." He smiled as she spoke. "He is the top student of the newly enrolled Bossipa department." She responded, "Perhaps old Bell has declined, so accepting a seemingly weak student." Helena stood up, supporting herself with her hands. I am Helena. Lee Sehun replied, I am Lee Sehun, a first-year metallurgy student. She showed anger, stopped chatting and work. This week's workload piled up due to new students. Leah Claudel sighed, yes, yes. Yes, I understand. She pointed to the room at the back. The entrance to the Gen workshop was in this direction. Observing the items in the room, Lee Sehun thought, her skills are even deeper than expected. He observed carefully, wondering how someone like her ran this shop. She went ahead checking each item. Indeed, a lot of work had accumulated. A vibrant tray on the table. This is the Enhancement color palette. These are powders ground from magical stones. He crossed his arms. I know the standard 8 colors, but she uses more, he asked. Your work is restoring damaged enhancement formulas using this, right? Helena held a brush, exactly. One hand holding a pan, the other dipping brush into the palette. This allows me to earn while performing enhancements freely without worrying about cost. Streaks of color flashed brilliantly. Ordinary pans in her hands became impressive. Lee Sehun watched silently, thinking, I came because I saw her struggling with work. Recalling an outdated person always failed exams and never kept the top student title. Watching Helena focus on the brush and pan, he realized the cause and solution for this backlog. With this thought he turned, immersion in work is a talent. Both hands in his pockets in front of the wooden table. Something on the table affected Lee Sehun, resonating with magic to create a special effect. He looked closely after a long gang fan era engraving on silver light, tingling sensations in hands and feet. Helena behind advised, try it. She frowned, if you're capable, pick any item from that pile. He thought she was intentionally testing him. Turned to look, if able to use that quality whetstone, it must be tried. He fixed his gaze on the item, hands gripping the handle tightly. She stood behind, arms crossed. Are you really going to do it with that? Lee Sehun eagerly touched the blade, even where, axis intact. This is the blade of someone truly skilled with sword. He held the whetstone thinking, this stone compresses magic particles evenly, enough to sharpen the blade to the ultimate edge. He gently placed the blade on the stone. Helena stood behind, wondering, is that kid really this year's freshman? Leah Claudel shouted, startling her, finish. She realized, oh ma'am, since when she didn't look back, I don't know either. She approached, she wanted to find a mistake in the junior, but he taught a lesson. Helena shoved her backward angrily, shut up for me. She hesitated at the forge, have you finished? He smiled, this is the best current result, next time will be better. Helena swung her sword, all right, both of you go back. Leah Claudel took his arm and stepped out. She scolded unnecessarily, let's go. He stood with hands on her hips where he had been. A man in a vest knocked, sis, are you forging? Helena frowned, looking out, stay quiet. He shyly rubbed his head. Many orders pending, how's the kitchen knives? He spoke impatiently. When will you give up restaurant work? She replied angrily, don't interfere with others' hobbies. He held a knife on the table, here it is. He sensed something unusual. He frowned, did you sharpen the knife after drinking? She stood arms crossed looking down. He asked, is this the work of a trusted assistant recently? Her skills must have progressed significantly. Helena closed her eyes. He didn't believe his eyes. What? She opened her eyes. A new freshman this year sharpened it. Calling the forge, who could it be? Sehun asked. The elderly metalwork shop owner was a former metallurgy professor. Leah Claudel replied, yes, retired 5 years ago, opened Aga QUF shop. Glanced at her, is there hidden meaning? She replied, not sure, probably nothing special. Images of the academy appeared. Many professors left the metallurgy department in 5 years. He responded, I see. Lee Sehun thought, if this place is weak in the future, it can't be ignored. Leah Claudel raised her hands before her chest. What matters is you see how I perform enhancement. He looked down, basically solid. Her face proud, oh that's nothing. He slightly discouraged, but her thinking is limited. The sky darkened as Leah Claudel leapt opposite. What did you say? Lee Sehun pointed. She devised an optimal plan but dared not apply. She stammered, how did you notice? Leah Claudel depressed, hearing feedback. If unaware one can learn. If knowing but not acting is the problem, imagination is a weapon. She restrains herself. Everything seemed shattered inside her, just like me. You think I do this because I don't understand. Lee Sehun winked, sighed, searching his shirt. He drew his sword, surprising her. I have another plan, can't perform long, observe carefully. Brought a stone underwater as an example, hypothetically. If someone requested placing the stone underwater, creating and dropping it is the blacksmith's work. The image gradually unfolded. Engraving an image of stone sinking in water is the art of enhancement. Thus, enhancement carries the essence of a dream. The sword appeared with red light swirling, blood fire. The sword flew before her in surprise with overwhelming force, radiant swordsmanship. Powerful images emerged, don't just affect the surface, impart strength deeply into the weapon's core. Observe the knife in hand with the surrounding power. If one layer isn't enough, divide into multiple layers. Lee Se-hun pressed down firmly. As she followed, he threw it forcefully back. Standing upright, the blade stabbed straight into the ground. It seemed that all movement stalled before that surge of power. He lowered his gaze with a contemplative, calculating expression. Though he could not yet be certain this was a precise form of enhancement, if it were maintained continuously, then the outcome would surely be different. Seeing her reach out and grasp it, he grew even more convinced that exceptional people like her would find their own path despite hesitation. Suddenly Leah Claudel panicked and pointed behind her. Senior, could you lend me that for a moment? Please let me borrow it. She crouched down, rocking the small cart back and forth like a swing as she pleaded. I promise I will perfect it properly and return it, please. Sweat dampened the back of his neck, yet he still handed the item over. I do not mind. Since you are taking it, then take this as well, her. He burst with excitement as if she had just received a priceless gift. Thank you so much. I truly cherish you. Then she vanished in the blink of an eye, leaving him alone in that empty space. Lee Se-hun let out a faint breath as a notification appeared. Establishing link with target Leah Claudel. Link level with creator Lee Se-hun is currently level 1. He blurted out a remark. That girl really is still childish. Amid the crowded campus, Lee Se-hun swept his gaze thoughtfully. At last today he had the chance to face one of the three hounds, the youthful clashes between the mad hound and the light-eradicating demon god. Remembering how Anao Erica had trailed behind him and distracted him, he turned and asked directly, what exactly are you doing? She whispered eerily, I am just following you. He replied indifferently, if I tell you to leave, would you go? She stepped up to his side. I will go. I can simply stand far away and observe. Se-hun glanced at her, then exhaled lightly. I figured you would do that. He spoke softly and stepped forward. Come on, let us go inside. A bone-chilling item appeared with its description. Social covenant link of Anao Erica, rare tier, quality from low to medium. An artificial mineral containing refined mana, capable of stabilizing chaotic mana flow when fused with other minerals. Another magic stone appeared with a notification, composite explosion core link of Leah Claudel, rare tier, superior quality. A multicolored ore acting as a catalyst to unlock the maximum potential of blended materials. On the massive screen of the vast stadium, Gang Fan appeared with a radiant smile, welcoming the new students of Babel Academy. Welcome everyone to the renowned martial arena. I extend my most sincere greetings to all of you in today's ranking match. He struck a playful pose and winked on screen. I am the youngest professor of the martial arts department and will serve as commentator. My name is Gang Fan. Beneath the dazzling lights her voice rang out. Without making everyone wait any longer, let us introduce the fighters. A tall woman stepped into the light. First, let us direct our attention here. The top student of the 4th year Agar QUF division, future heir of the Myers family, the cradle of S-rank heroes. She brushed her golden hair back with one hand, a nearly flawless warrior who has continuously broken records and held the #1 position in the martial arena for 3 years. She is currently an active rank hero, and also our reigning champion. Her beautiful face was revealed, the sword saint who once conquered the highest peak of the hero tower, Arya Myers. Cheers thundered as Lee Se-hun and Anao Erica folded their arms and looked down. Sister, please let me follow you. Sister Arya Myers is truly dazzling. Gang Fan narration continued to resound. The first to dare challenge the champion today. The spotlight shone on a man carrying a greatsword on his back, inheritor of the fire wheel blazing spear technique, top student of the 3rd year spear department, and a promising top 10 contender of the martial arena. Se-hun looked down pensively. So we finally face each other. That man unleashed a fierce aura. The mad hound. Gang Fan shouted his name loudly. Seong-ha. Blazing sword trails shot forward, then halted just before striking the ground. Opposite him, Arya Myers wielded her sword with masterful control. He launched an attack that forced him to stagger backward. He gritted his teeth and struggled to hold on. His hand clenched tightly around the wooden railing beside him. Arya Myers' eyes flashed with intense pressure. Rings of fire spiraled around her, as if ready to crash straight towards Seong-ha. That scene made Lee Se-hun above fall into thought. Even accounting for his young age, he still had not reached the desired standard. Could it be that the title of inheritor of the fire wheel blazing spear did not come with matching support? Seong-ha drew his hand back into a defensive stance. Many things troubled him, but the greatest obstacle remained the equipment he was using. Even so, he still threw it away and prepared to charge forward. A long, sharp blade grazed past his neck by a hair breadth. Seong-ha froze before the blade pressed close to his throat. He lowered his voice and admitted, I have lost. Arya Myers lowered her sword and said cheerfully, "You have tried very hard, the match officially ends. The final winner is Arya Myers." The two stood together on the platform. Aang Fan held the microphone and continued, "Next will be the interview segment with the two fighters as planned, but Seong Ha has left for personal reasons." She covered her mouth and laughed lightly. "Facing the 9th rank right afterward would truly be too much for me." Seong Ha walked away silently as all the lights focused on Arya Myers. "How about I fill this gap with a live question and answer session?" The audience above responded enthusiastically. Pai Lee Sehun narrowed his eyes in thought. That man looks very irritated. He stood up, causing Inao Erika to turn toward him. "Are you leaving without watching until the end?" He slipped his hands into his pockets and replied, "I am not very interested in that fighting style." As he left he said, "Look at her. Standing there she must feel quite anxious." Inao Erika thought with relief that he did not go to meet her brother, but why does he seem so angry? Suddenly a voice sounded beside her, quite an interesting freshman. Arya Myers had been standing behind her at some point. Her orange eyes gleamed with hope. "Perhaps I have found the one I have been waiting for." Seong Ha sat in meditation in the park, near the martial arena. Lee Sehun approached silently, with the thought that Seong Ha was still alive and well at present. Seong Ha recalled the dazzling techniques he once unleashed. Despite his impulsive temperament, he had been the pillar of the Suicide Squad, and also the last to fall in order to block the demon god of the annihilation catastrophe. Standing behind him, Sehun thought that since he had not fallen too deeply this time, collecting the link stone would likely be easier. Seong Ha frowned and asked if you were watching the practice match earlier. "No," Sehun replied with his hand in his pocket. "I did take a look." Seong Ha glanced back slightly. "The fact that you found me proves your strength is not ordinary." Seong Ha turned around with a cold gaze. "So it is you again. Why is the top student of the Bossipa department appearing here?" Sehun thought, why is he so hostile, then spoke. "I came hoping the two of us could exchange a few words." He turned away coldly. "Get out of my sight." Lee Sehun slowly stepped forward. "This will benefit you, senior," but Seong Ha squatted down and replied, "Perhaps you do not understand, so I will say it once. I extremely hate the weak." He stood facing Seong Ha, especially those who accomplish nothing themselves, and think a few tricks can stand equal with me. Therefore, whatever you intend to say, just go back. Those words made him freeze, a mere blacksmith. Recalling how Seong Ha once told him to return to his forge and craft instead, to know his place and stay in it. Yet compared to when he was called a mad dog, he was far more polite now. Lee Sehun silently gathered mana in his hand. With that attitude, it was clearly impossible to resolve this with words. Seong Ha cast him a glance. "It seems you do not intend to stop." He stepped closer to where Sehun was casting, and said, "I also have something to tell you." His next words made him halt. "The history of the fire-wheel blazing spear will end by my own hand." Seong Ha immediately dashed forward. His clenched fist unleashed a violent surge of power. Punch had just been thrown when Sehun blocked it with his own force. A notification appeared just as that man was blasted backward. "The greedy iron link mark has officially activated." Seong Ha frowned in shock. "Did he just neutralize my mana-enhanced punch?" Flames spiraled around Seong Ha as he focused on Sehun, worthy of the top student. "Perhaps you are finally qualified to speak with me." His aura grew more resolute, yet the trajectory of the blazing residual mana still lingered. "This is the true power of the fire-wheel blazing spear. Everything will end here." Both of them shot forward at the same time. The car roared as if deliberately building momentum, hurling flames straight toward Seong Ha. Thick smoke billowed up, completely obscuring his figure. A moment later, he slowly stepped out from that hazy curtain of smoke. In the distance, he stood stunned, wondering why the flames that once responded only to his mana were now obediently resting in another's hand. Could it truly be real? A sense of unease washed over him. Had he already severed and seized that source of power? Suddenly, a streak of fire sliced through the air and grazed his neck. He glared ahead, silently cursing the one facing him. Seong Ha stood there with violet energy coiling around him, looking as though he might spiral out of control, forcing him to stay on guard. The image of the pink-haired man carrying a weapon before the city gate surfaced. Perhaps the disaster that year had also stemmed from that same impulsive temperament. That man swung his fist to strike, the blow tearing through the air as it shot forward. The victim was still thinking the effect of the greed skill was about to fade. His endurance had reached its limit. As the fist neared Lee Sehun's face, the energy sustaining that skill was completely drained. His body could no longer hold on. He fell straight down as though gravity had suddenly vanished. At that very moment he caught Seong Ha's punch, leaving the other party frozen in shock. In truth, Jake Myers had rushed in to block it instead, catching everyone off guard. He asked if he was acquainted with the top student of the Borsapa department, and you awkwardly replied that it was only a casual acquaintance. After that he withdrew his hand, stepped aside more calmly, and told them to leave immediately. Jake Myers responded awkwardly, then turned to urge Lee Se-hun to leave at once. He shot you a pale look, reminding you to remember his words and stop talking nonsense. Withdraw quickly. Seong-ha stood alone in contemplation, blaming himself for nearly letting his emotions carry him away and tarnish his own honor and that of his master. Along the long street, you walked ahead of him. You reproached him for daring to cause trouble with a senior like that. If not stopped in time, it might have truly turned dangerous, while Se-hun merely lowered his head and sighed. The person beside you worriedly said it was not that simple. What had you just said? A notification appeared stating that the link with the target Seong-ha had been established. He said he had only been scaring him. In his mind, formed a plan to extract the link stone, recalling the fierce battle of the one once called the Mad Dog Yam Seong-ha. If he was currently too weak, the effect of the link stone might change. He needed to find a way to raise the link level. He glanced at Jake Myers, thinking this person might be useful, then asked Han Bamoth if his hand was hurt. Pointed to his palm and said it was nothing since his hand was sturdy. Se-hun gave a faint, cold smile. How ridiculous, you turned and emphasized what was more important. Jake Myers asked about what he had said to his sister. Se-hun replied that he had merely remarked she was a bit arrogant. Jake clutched his head in panic because his sister kept interrogating him about you, while Se-hun thought of Arya Myers. He guessed she must have set her sights on him, recalling that woman's cold expression. Arya Myers smiled amid the noisy crowd yet heard everything clearly. Jake hurriedly advised that next time you should not speak that way because his sister was an AMA level hero. Se-hun slipped his hands into his pockets and said that if it was merely ordinary attention he would gladly accept it, then thought that if he could attract the attention of her opponent his influence would increase. Jake sighed and said not to take it lightly because you did not truly understand his sister. Before he could finish, Se-hun cut in and called her a petty schemer. Jake startled and looked around, awkwardly saying such harsh words should not be used. Se-hun's face darkened when asked why he held such hostility toward her. The image of a blonde girl in armor holding a holy sword appeared, Arya Myers. He stood proudly like a monarch confronting a monster. There was once a time when that sword had been nothing but an obscure, nameless object. Beneath the dark moon, Arya spread her wings wide. When she raised her sword to the sky, the sword saint vanished and the one who appeared afterward turned the demon god's feet into a weapon of her own. In the darkness, Se-hun let out a faint, cold laugh. Just seeing her face was enough to irritate him. He casually turned away, waved dismissively, and said he would head off first. Jake stood there blankly behind him, not understanding what had just happened. Suddenly his phone chimed with a notification. A new message appeared on the screen. Arya Myers texted that you had just met an interesting friend. Remember to tell her about it later. After reading it, Jake turned pale. Could it be that he had to act as a bridge between the two? His gaze suddenly grew blank with worry. Arya's next message implied that his cunning older sister was asking him for a small favor. Alone in the street, Jake read the messages and lamented. Then the scene shifted elsewhere. The next morning at the lecture hall of Babel Academy, Se-hun sat in class clutching his aching shoulder, wondering if he had gone too far with Seong-ha yesterday. The person sitting at the desk in front announced that the exchange schedule would soon be set. Rizdova drove his small vehicle into the classroom and shouted for order. He stepped onto the podium and introduced himself as being in charge of the major for the next 2 weeks, with content focused on attribute refinement. The entire class turned pale, recalling his erratic reputation, while Rizdova remained stern. Before the lesson, he required assignments to be submitted next Thursday, then called David's name, making him hurriedly respond present. Riz Tihan sat comfortably on his vehicle, reviewing the list, and finally read out the name Lee Se-hun. Hearing his name, he stood up. Han Bamoth in front curiously asked about the amount he would receive. The person beside guessed it must be triple theirs. Rizdova privately announced that Lee Se-hun's budget had not yet been disclosed, leaving him astonished as he asked again. He stroked his beard and explained that because your product far exceeded expectations, it would be put up for public auction for second-year students. Final bid would determine the budget, he said to be patient, while Se-hun suspected interference from the vice principal. Thinking it over, if there were an issue, Professor Kim In-chin would have stopped it. He replied that he understood. Rizdova brightened and began the lesson on excess mana, saying there was an outstanding trainee to assist with the practice. That person was Seong-ha, a third-year student of the merchant combat major at AGA QUF, introduced as a temporary teaching assistant. A student beside Sehun was surprised by the famous senior's appearance. The whole class buzzed with excitement. Seong-ha stood beside the professor. He said the introduction was enough and required them to master the theory before practice. The spherical samples radiating mana used to forge weapons were divided into two types, the first being the basic energy charging type. Second was the independent type capable of generating or absorbing mana from the environment, harder to control, yet holding great potential. Rizdova explained that a mana core had no fixed template, but depended on materials, technique, and the creator's resources. Therefore, he required them to begin with the energy charging type and invited the assistant to demonstrate. Seong-ha clenched his hand, releasing blazing red mana that spread throughout the classroom. Fire attribute was inherently explosive, making it very difficult to maintain as stable excess mana. He formed two streams of red energy crossing into an arc, and said that if restrained it would possess astonishing storage capability. Rizdova pointed at that simulation and introduced the technique blazing spear wheel scorched flame that the assistant was demonstrating. Witnessing that display, everyone was stunned by such refined control of firepower. Some admitted that even keeping a single furnace stable was already beyond them. On the podium, Rizdova raised a device in his hand and said that since we were fortunate to have such an excellent assistant, we must make good use of it. You must submit your assignments before next Thursday. The whiteboard already detailed the requirements with the topic excess transmutation mana in the form of energy infusion shaped like a wheel of fire. He also carefully reminded that you may be creative as long as you do not stray from this focus. Sitting on a small cart, Rizdova excitedly twirled the staff in his hand and urged everyone to quickly head to the refinement room and remember to change into appropriate attire. When he left the classroom, only Seong-ha remained standing there. The other trainees immediately sprang up, believing their opportunity had arrived. Han Bamuth and a few others came up with the idea of taking the chance to get acquainted with senior Seong-ha. He excitedly waved his hand, intending to start a conversation. With a polite appearance, he was about to introduce himself as Han Bamuth when the gloomy aura around Seong-ha suddenly spread. Step aside, Han Bamuth did not dare hesitate any longer and dejectedly left the spot. Indeed, the atmosphere of the class suddenly grew noticeably heavy. Seong-ha stood motionless, his face cold and his eyes half closed. Those seemingly emotionless eyes abruptly opened and turned in one direction. As Lee Sehun casually prepared to leave the classroom without paying attention to his surroundings, he suddenly heard his name being called, Lee Sehun. He stopped and received the question of "What do you know about me?" His sturdy body radiated swirling red mana. People said the proficiency of Eternal Ember Spear transmutation depended on the number of fire wheels. Lee Won Ryong, head of the Flower Fire sect and an rank hero, had reached 8 wheels. Sehun slowly walked toward the door and replied that the 3 wheels he had just created were too easy. So if done correctly, he could completely maintain 6 wheels at the same time. Seong-ha hurried after him and called out to wait, then what? Sehun suddenly spoke, causing him to freeze in place. He had once touched the 7th wheel. That is right, he leisurely slipped his hands into his pockets and continued that one day he would no longer be able to hold it. Seong-ha looked at his back and wondered how he knew when he had never reported it to his master. His face turned colder, his voice deepened. I have some talent with fire, but when observing the flame you cast I felt something was wrong. You cannot activate all of the remaining residual power, and instead seem to let it scatter chaotically. Seong-ha stepped closer and bluntly asked whether he knew the reason. He was stunned, his eyes widening upon hearing the reply that I also have a few guesses. But the next sentence left him disappointed. Because I do not see any need to tell you. Seong-ha stared blankly and uttered what? Standing behind him, he clenched his hand at his side and said, state your condition. Lee Sehun straightforwardly raised one finger. First, you must pay a price worthy of my advice and assistance. A second finger appeared on his hand. Second, when facing a difficult choice, you must consult me. After speaking, Lee Sehun turned and walked away, telling him to give me your answer before arriving at the refinement room. Leaning back, Seong-ha replied without hesitation, I agree. His voice was solemn, with the condition that you prove your word. The scene shifted to the afternoon at the forge workshop, where several people in identical uniforms were working. Lee Sehun focused on placing materials into the blazing furnace. He crafted without a sketch. Could it be that he did not need prior verification? The carefully selected stones burned inside the furnace. Fire and dark attribute ores were mixed in a 7-to-3 ratio. The two standing behind him whispered that if he threw them in so recklessly all attribute mana would dissipate. Why would the top student act so boldly? His gaze remained steady, focused solely on his calculation. The temperature gradually rose until attribute mana began to leak outward. T-Hun quickly removed his gloves, directly thrust his bare hand into the fire, and adjusted the mana to retain the attribute portion. That was the heat substitution technique. Watching from outside, Rizdova broke into a cold sweat because he had used heat substitution so early. So that was why Professor Kim In-chin had agreed to a public auction. A faint smile curved on Lee Se-hun's lips. To ordinary people it was merely normal heat substitution, but in Seong-ha's eyes it was an entirely different sight. In another moment, Seong-ha silently widened his eyes and said, "Observe carefully." Black shoes pressed against the pedal, the toe stepping down decisively. A source of red mana tinged with black flared up. The transmutation attribute mana that spread outward was pulled inward, while the deeply submerged dark attribute was pushed out. Thanks to that, the two opposing streams of mana reached balance and formed a complete circle. Seong-ha crossed his arms and watched intently, yet still felt disappointed. Was that all? Lee Se-hun's pupils rotated like moving wheels of fire. My second mana attribute was once considered taboo because it obstructed eternal ember. Seong-ha still stared blankly and scratched his head. If used that way, I would have fallen back to the fifth wheel. Se-hun was startled and asked again. Seong-ha immediately formed 5 wheels before him and explained that I perfected the black fire wheel but lacked the strength to maintain 6. Even so, it is still stronger than 7 ordinary fire wheels. He gently closed his eyes in frustration and turned away because the Flower Fire sect periodically sent instructors to inspect the ability of external successor disciples. A massive dark ring would be erected for fire mana to pass through, and anyone who fell below the 6th wheel would lose the right of succession. Lee Se-hun calmly suggested using the old method for this time. Seong-ha dejectedly formed a small circle in his hand and said that method was also unsuitable. Black mana flared strongly behind the fire wheel. My dark attribute is no longer as controllable as before. Se-hun rubbed his aching forehead and asked when the instructor would arrive. Seong-ha immediately replied, "Tomorrow." He narrowed his eyes in thought because losing the successor position meant being forced to leave the academy. He needed a plan executable within 1 day. Suddenly he placed his hand firmly on Seong-ha's shoulder. Lee Se-hun eagerly asked if his position were preserved, would he be able to accomplish something. Seong-ha replied briefly that I can. His gaze turned solemn. Good. Lee Se-hun smiled and took out the red black stone. Seong-ha Ionic Link Red Resonant Black Stone High Grade Optimal Quality. This was a type of ore where fire and dark attribute mana coexisted, their wavelengths resonating with innate ability. First, we will change your weapon. Led Seong-ha to the advanced training room of Aga QUF. Only the top 100 dojos or top 30 departments could use it. Se-hun entered, sighed, and said it truly loved extravagance. He touched the blue screen and asked if the interface could be changed. I will adjust it a little. The two stood still, watching the interface before them gradually transform. Seeing the emblem, Lee Se-hun teased that, "Do you miss the Flower Fire sect that much?" He calmly replied that it was sent by my master, so I occasionally use it. Looked at the black stone in his hand with excitement. Then let us begin crafting the training tool. With just a light snap, the black stone split into 2. Seong-ha Ionic Link Highest Grade Resonant Black Stone, or where fire and dark attributes coexisted and created resonant waves with innate mana. A long sharp weapon was quickly completed. It is done. Seong-ha held the 2 spears. Still worried because even one was hard to control, Se-hun calmly said that this way it would be easier to manipulate the 2 types of mana. Se-hun placed his hands on his hips and instructed that from now on the left hand forms the fire wheel while the right hand releases the dark attribute. Seong-ha asked in surprise whether just releasing it was enough and received the answer that was correct. Seong-ha closed his eyes and took a deep breath to steady himself. His gaze sharpened, both hands gripping the spear's front and back as he spun once. He suddenly stopped upon realizing the spear in front was emitting mana. Confused, he raised the spear to look and asked what that was. Se-hun calmly pointed out that he had inadvertently let the dark attribute spill into his left hand. Felt the mana emanating from the spear, multiple attributes blending was normal, but his was so chaotic that it restrained itself, perhaps because he had long suppressed the dark attribute. Se-hun fastened a bracelet onto his wrist and said, "Once you are accustomed to managing both attributes simultaneously, reaching the 6th wheel will be faster. Wear it during training." Xiangha looked at the bracelet and smiled. You truly have many fine items. After that, he continuously practiced the spear in various stances. 3 hours passed quickly. Standing outside observing, Lee Sehun smiled in satisfaction because he adapted very quickly, perhaps because this method was devised by his own future self. He sensed every cell and the flow of mana around him to see how formidable his past self had been. The rhythm of breath, the movement of muscles, and the changes within the mind. A wavelength of mana circulated throughout the body and then concentrated at the spear tip. Xiangha noticed his gaze and curiously asked what he was staring at so intently. Ji-hun held both hands firmly, naively thinking I was just collecting data. He rested and his hand brushed lightly across his cheek, then stopped. I need it to craft the weapon he will use. Ji-hun sat naturally in the chair. This time I'm doing it as an assignment, so don't expect too much. Xiangha turned his face away. Who would expect a weapon from a first-year student? Lee Sehun refused to sit still, glancing elsewhere conveniently. Master Ha swung both spears down from above. Is there a reason he must maintain the succession position? Didn't look back, only replied briefly, the master wants me to become the head disciple. He stood there, lowering the spears, his voice cold. As a disciple, I only follow the master's will. The one who adopted and cared for the blind orphan Xiangha was a top S-rank hero, the first head of the Hua sect. The photo on the wall clearly showed his face and name. When young, he sat beside Xiangha, patting his head and teaching him. Even after losing strength from injury, he still held absolute influence over him. Ji-hun closed his eyes, recalling the three of them meeting, be harmonious with each other. Level 3 connection, yes. Xiangha drew his gaze back, wanting to know why he helped me. He furrowed his brows, eyes closed, deep in thought. A gloomy, desolate place stretching from forest to city. Swampy regions full of chaotic demonic beasts. Lee Sehun sat with legs draped over the chair, facing him. I plan to infiltrate that demon domain. I need protection and materials to craft weapons for them. Didn't hesitate to offer an ambitious gesture. If he is the next head, skills and finances must be considerable. He was speechless, practical indeed. Lee Sehun frowned. Of course, we're not acquainted. Why should I do charity for him? What? Xiangha tapped his spear on the shoulder, implying that help comes at a price. He raised his eyes, pointing the spear at his sharp gaze. Help me become head disciple. Then I will follow you into the 6 great demons. Old memories resurfaced from Xiangha's words. Forge me a weapon. Now I will eliminate the demon gods for you. Lee Sehun laughed. His fingers revealed the new jade. You won't regret this. Jade in his hand emitted fierce demonic power. Whether he liked it or not, I would elevate him to head disciple. The red H-stone resonance bond was activated. In the first floor common training hall of Flavian, Hyan-un appeared solemnly with attendants. Long time no see, I am Gang Hyan-un, the 7th circle instructor of the Hua sect. Master Ha focused on the 3 behind. Who are they? Hyan-un introduced. They are top disciples chosen by the sect master. I must broaden their perspective through sparring. Covered his mouth chuckling, because Thiu Jia is the most talented after the succeeding sect master. Master Ha scolded displeased. Hey instructor Hyan-un, eyes cold and sharp. The successor hasn't been decided, mind your word. Hyan-un still smiled naturally. Sorry, a little misunderstanding. Hyan-un seriously extended his hand. Shall we begin the skill test? Master Ha refused outright no. In half a whirl the title appeared. I propose promotion to 7th circle. Hyan-un showed contemptuous eyes, a mere practitioner dreaming of the head seat. He remembered the helper's words. Arrogant, if Yam Seong-ham challenges the 7th circle, crush him completely. No matter what happens, I will handle it. Hyan-un stood opposite, explaining at length. From the 7th circle, the test includes duels with instructor Thiu and Grand Elder Eam Jin Hyan. Too early for you. Xiangha stood indifferent, the speaker verbose. Ji-hun poked at his pride, afraid to anger the instructor. Hearing this, Hyan-un went mad, calling out, bring the instructor immediately. Promotion to 7th circle would be through regional duel. He held his spear upright. Regional duels are simple, compete in strength, stronger flame wheel wins. Condition for promotion is win or at least superior in fire. Xiangha raised eyes, holding 2 swords as called. Alright, let's start. Hyan-un sneered confidently. Twin spear lacks finesse. Xiangha ignored, swinging both spears with fire power. Hyan-un still scolded. Forgot to restrain your dark mana. Such chaotic fire will not be recognized as proper flame. Xiangha smiled, forming a rotating fire circle around himself. See the results once we truly begin. Hyan-un confidently cast fire from behind. You will regret it. Began spinning the fire seriously. Mixed dark fire flared, no one visible. His gaze had to look away. Damn real form. Black dragon pierced the fire, devouring them. What is happening? The flame wheel swallowed everything. It was torn apart, black eyes astonished. Just seconds later, the staff in his hand broke into three. Aeon unknelt on the ground before the shattered weapon. Zihun held two spears arrogantly before his collapse, claiming it's uneconomical. Zihun stood observing, a hint of regret. What's next, wasting prime materials. Xiangha held two spears, chatting. When Gang Fan's promotion comes, I will officially be Hua Sect's instructor, the legitimate successor. Sehun bowed curiously. How do you sit in the sect master's position? Xiangha glanced. Two conditions must be met. First, reach 8 circles. Second, gain majority approval from instructors. Zihun picked up the broken staff. Even if reaching 8 circles, will they agree? Xiangha affirmed, I can gain approval through competition, no problem, but then no regional duels remain. It will be harder than today. He stood up, hands in pockets again, so it won't take long. Xiangha firmly shook the spear. Sounds casual. Zihun replied briefly, I say because it seems feasible, just watch today's results. He looked at him. From now on, see how the payment unfolds. Xiangha closed eyes calmly, slight smile. Tell me what is needed for settlement, cash or materials, I will comply. His voice deep. Moreover, another item needs your work. Li Sehun glanced surprised. Another order so soon. Xiangha clenched the weapon. Quality isn't bad, just for class submission. Calculated smile. If made in a few hours, I'm curious about the next step. Xiangha punched Li Sehun's shoulder. Make an easier weapon. Li Sehun stepped aside. Put the knife down. You almost stabbed us. What did you say? IOM Xingha bond leveled up to 2. Strong connection, solid relationship. The IOM SCOM Ha link is now a transaction. Transaction completes crystallization of bond stone. Fast crystallization speed in transaction. Number of stones none. Scene shifts to packed audience. Lights illuminate the auctioneer's stage. The auctioneer appeared urgent, waving hands. Thank you for waiting for the Year 2 cultivation auction. Let's begin. Li Sehun appeared in audience row. Didn't expect such a crowd. Now Erica noticed his outfit, style change. He crossed arms. Professor Kim Inchin emphasized appearance importance. He carefully pondered distinct top scholar title. Kim Inchin appeared calmly on stage. Difficult to openly control the focal person. Li Sehun crossed arms, smirked while observing, curious about Mai's plan to seize cultivation authority. Today's theme was sword sharpness, 36 items plus special quality inspection. According to the announcer, white cell jumpo fabric, woven from S-rank white tiger fur, soft but as strong as metal / resistant. An assistant man struck the fabric hard to demonstrate its property. Loud noise echoed in the room. The announcer showed only the floor effect. To increase damage, easily spot defective item. The auction used umpo scoops to remove faulty item. The first sword handed over, introducing the blue student blade Joza. Crowd cheered. Oh, looks interesting. They prepared carefully, and now Erica eyed Li Sehun. Do you know why they did that? He began dissecting the traits of a fragment of the white tiger beast before the gaze of the blue-eyed young man. Most people assumed this species merely possessed a sturdy physique, yet in truth its power structure was far more intricate, especially the outer layer of fur. Its flesh and bones carried completely separate attributes. The fur alone could replicate the sharpness of any metal weapon that had ever struck it. Therefore, no matter how exquisite the weapon used, over time its edge would be significantly worn down. And now Erica rested her chin on her hand and thought, if that was the case, then would the White Radiance longsword not be at a disadvantage, since blades that prioritized sharpness often struggled to ensure durability. Sehun leaned on his hand, anticipation clear in his eyes. Indeed, this was nothing less than an obvious trap aimed directly at me and Professor Kim Inchin. However, if the sword were to break right here, the professor's reputation would suffer greatly. That would only happen if the crafting process had been careless. On stage, the host struck the auction hammer hard, announcing that the 25th sword had been finalized at 4 million won. The final item was brought out for display, and the MC began the introduction. This was sword number 36. A work by Li Sehun, the top freshman of the refinement department. The official quality inspection of the White Radiance longsword began. When the cold blade slashed down onto the white cloth, a surge of force suddenly erupted. The man tightened his grip on the hilt, pouring more strength into his hand. Yet the sword abruptly recoiled, slipping beyond his control. Witnessing that scene, Michael Bamuth froze, his face turning pale. What exactly had just happened? The White Radiance longsword still retained astonishing sharpness, only the tip was slightly chipped. What had truly occurred?